Chapter 851. Hooligan. She looked at the words that made her uncomfortable. This time, Sue Pasian didn't bother to think too much about it. She blocked the other party's number. She looked up and met Lin Feixing's confused eyes. He was looking at her calmly, and his expression seemed to be a little confused. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? No. Sue Pasian shook her head. It's nothing. I'll just ignore the harassing text. Lin Feixing didn't suspect anything. Sue Pasian turned her phone on silent mode and put it back in her bag. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Ling Jing's car seemed to be driving out again. She thought he was going to leave, but he gestured at her through the car window. Seeing his middle finger, Sue Pasian almost couldn't hold it anymore. Fortunately, that bastard Ling Jing knew when to stop. He left after he gestured. Looking at the empty parking space, Sue Pasian breathed a sigh of relief. Forget it, why bother with a hooligan like him? She couldn't lose her identity. Sue Pasian ignored Ling Jing and planned to have a good meal with Lin Feixing. However, looking at Lin Feixing's gentle appearance, she couldn't help but think of Ling Jing's text just now. Crazy. Really crazy. She thought that Ling Jing was just bored, but she didn't expect to see Ling Jing's car the next day and the third day. On the fourth day, Sue Pasian couldn't help it anymore. She walked straight to the Cadillac after work. She knocked on the window and Ling Jing's face appeared. Pasian. Ling Jing, that's enough. What? Do you have nothing to do? Follow me every day? Ling Jing glanced at her and looked a little disappointed. I thought you would say you missed me. Ling Jing, be serious. I'm very serious. Ling Jing said with some grievance, and I really have nothing to do. I told you last time that I found a job, but I haven't started yet. Just because you don't work doesn't mean I don't need to work. Please don't follow me. Of course I have to follow you. Ling Jing said this a little anxiously. What if you meet a pervert like last time? Where did so many perverts come from? Do you know that following me like this is not something a normal person would do? Sue Pasian gritted her teeth. Do you know that I can call the police if you do this? Then you can do it. Ling Jing is very rogue, and even takes out the mobile phone to her. Do you want me to help you press the number? She couldn't continue this conversation, so she turned around and left. She had never seen a person like Ling Jing. In her past 20 years of life, she had never seen such a rogue around her. Ling Jing watched her walk away and revealed a very strange smile behind her. Women. When I, young Master Ling, make a move, I definitely won't be empty. So, don't even think about escaping. Sue Pasian thought that she would see Ling Jing following her the next day, but she didn't see Ling Jing. Not only on the second day, but also on the third and fourth day. A week had passed, and she still hadn't met Ling Jing. She couldn't deny that she was a little worried. He recalled the first time he met Ling Jing. That guy was chopped down. Ling Jing, that bastard, wouldn't be walking on the old road again, right? Sue Pasian reminded herself that what happened to Ling Jing had nothing to do with her. Since she was going to break it off, she had to break it off cleanly. But although she said that rationally, she couldn't think that way because of the worry in her heart. After not seeing Ling Jing for a week, she finally couldn't help it. She picked up her bag and was about to go out, but she met Lin Feixing, who happened to be looking for her. You just got off work? Then I'm just in time. Let's have dinner together. Sue Pasian was stunned. When she saw Lin Feixing's smiling face, she wanted to say that she was not free, but she forced herself to harden her heart. She would just ignore that bastard. After having dinner with Lin Feixing, Sue Pasian maintained perfect politeness and calmness. However, after Lin Feixing sent her home, she thought for a long time and finally released Ling Jing's number and called him. No one picked up the phone. Sue Pasian frowned slightly. She sat on the sofa and looked at Rong Yuan in front of her. There were many traces left by that person here. That bastard didn't even move completely. There were still his clothes in the closet, and the CD he had watched last time was still on the coffee table. The man's ability to make money was not good, but he was very picky. He had to wear good clothes, and he had to eat food that suited his taste. Now that the man no longer lived with a woman in such a small house, for some reason, Su Peijian just had a feeling that the small apartment was incompatible with Ling Jing. With his personality and his conditions. He should be like a little prince, living in a villa. In fact, most of the time, he was really like a proud and conceited little prince. When they first met, he was extremely arrogant, but later on, he changed. He was such a conceited and calm person, but in front of him, he was like a large pet. Su Peijian couldn't think about it. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt, and the more restless she felt. She stood up and wanted to go back to her room to rest for a while. When she passed by the hallway, she saw a few post-it notes on the wall. She was stunned for a moment, went forward, and tore off the first one. Su Peijian, I like you. Su Peijian, come back. I'm leaving. Su Peijian, this is your house. I'm not living here. Come back. Su Peijian. I said I like you. Do you believe me? Su Peijian, I have nothing, but I have a heart that likes you. Will you accept me? The man's handwriting was similar to the man's appearance. The calligraphy was like a dragon and the phoenix was dancing, and the writing was sharp. Su Peijian clenched the post-it note and crumpled it into a ball. Childish, who would accept a man like this? A heart? What did she want his heart for? She shook her head and threw the paper into the trash can. After throwing it, she stood in front of the trash can for a long time. In front of her was the scene of Ling Jing looking at her carefully. She closed her eyes and stood there for a long time, lost in thought. It was dark outside, and the house was brightly lit. She clenched her hands at her sides, and finally walked back to the porch to pick up the car key. She got in the car and went to the old house that Ling Jing had taken her to before. Su Peijian saw Ling Jing's Cadillac across the road. She knew that he was home. Without much pause, she went straight up to the third floor of the apartment. The sound of her high heels was a little loud. Just like in the past, every step felt like stepping on her heart. Su Peijian was a little nervous. Standing in front of the door, she raised her hand to knock, but then paused. She knew in her heart what it meant once she knocked on this door. But this time, she didn't hesitate anymore. She raised her hand and knocked on the door. No one came to open the door. Su Peijian became more and more worried. Was that person not here? She took out her phone and called Ling Jing, but still no one picked up. She called again, but no one picked up. Su Peijian waited for a few more minutes. The voice-activated lights in the corridor lit up and dimmed and brightened again. She didn't give up. After thinking about it, she called Ling Jing again. This time, no one picked up. When she turned around to leave, she heard footsteps downstairs. The voice-activated lights lit up again. She turned around and saw Ling Jing appear in front of her. He stepped on the stairs, lifted the stairs, and walked up to her step by step. Su Peijian could also see the appearance of the person in front of her clearly. At first glance, her heart trembled fiercely. Her lips moved. Su Peijian watched him get closer and closer, but she couldn't say a word. Ling Jing looked very disheveled. He wasn't dressed in bright clothes like he had been a few days ago. His jacket was stained with some dust, and his hair was also dirty. Most importantly, he didn't look too good. When Ling Jing saw her, his eyes lit up. Then, his eyes dimmed again. He took out his key to open the door, ignoring Su Peijian. Su Peijian looked at the gray mark on his shoulder, and her brows furrowed. When she opened the door, she smelled medicine. It was the smell of medicine for bruises. What's wrong? Where are you hurt? I'm fine. Why are you here? Ling Jing stood at the door, blocking her way, not letting her in. Seeing him like this, Su Peijian was more and more sure that he was hiding something from her. She wanted to enter the door, but Ling Jing's tall body was blocking her way, so she couldn't go in. Ling Jing, are you hurt? Where are you hurt? No. I'm fine. Ling Jing was very stubborn. He looked at Su Peijian and said, aren't you going to be with that pretty boy? Why are you still looking for me? His tone was full of complaint and grievance. He was a man of more than 1.8 meters, but now he was acting like a child. Ling Jing, are you done? I'm not. Didn't you say that you wouldn't let me follow you? So I won't follow you. Why? Is it wrong of me not to follow you now? These words were said in a fit of pique. Su Peijian ignored what he said. Her attention was now on the smell of medicine in the room. She pushed Ling Jing away and forced her way in. On the coffee table in the living room, she saw 2 bottles of medicinal oil. She suddenly turned around and looked at Ling Jing. Are you hurt? No. Ling Jing took a step back. I'm not hurt. You're hurt. Su Peijian took a step forward, trying to see where he was hurt. However, Ling Jing avoided her hand. Aren't you going to be with that pretty boy? Don't you want me? If that's the case, why are you still here? Ling Jing, stop it. Su Peijian's expression was rare. Tell me, did you hurt Ruli? I said I'm not hurt. Ling Jing said in an indifferent tone, it's just that when I was moving things, I was hit by the goods. Su Peijian didn't expect this reason. Take off your clothes and let me have a look. Woman, what are you doing now? Ling Jing raised his eyebrows and said with a careless attitude, what? Pity me? Forget it. Although I'm not as good as you, I really don't need your pity. Su Peijian stared at his face. In the end, without saying anything more, she stepped forward and tore off Ling Jing's clothes. Under the coat was a t-shirt, both of which were stained with dust. Su Peijian acted as if she didn't see it. She reached for the hem of the clothes and rolled it up. Ling Jing stood there. Just now, he said nice things, but now he stood still and let her examine him. The clothes fell to the ground. Su Peijian saw a big mark on Ling Jing's shoulder. It was estimated to be 2 days. Although the base color was red, some parts of it had begun to turn blue. Su Peijian touched it with her hand, and Ling Jing moved his body to the side. Don't touch me. Su Peijian didn't say anything. She watched Ling Jing walk to the broken sofa and sit down. He picked up one of the bottles of medicinal oil and was about to pour it on his shoulder. Su Peijian stepped forward and held the bottle. What are you doing? That's not how you apply medicine. What right do you have to control me? Ling Jing, stop it. You're not a child. If you don't like me, you can leave. Su Peijian really wanted to leave, but she couldn't do it. Looking at the dust on the man's body, she couldn't stand it. You can't do this. Let's go. I'll take you to the doctor. No need. Ling Jing shook his head. It's just a hit. I won't die. As he spoke, he pointed to his chest. Look, I was stabbed here and almost died. But I didn't die, did I? When he mentioned the wound, Su Peijian remembered their first meeting. Scenes from the past few months that they had known each other kept flashing through his mind. Su Peijian was still holding the bottle of medicinal oil in her hand. She sat down next to him and was about to apply the medicine. Once again, Ling Jing avoided her hand. Ling Jing. What? Ling Jing stood up. I'm so dirty. I'm going to take a shower. Su Peijian didn't say anything. Ling Jing went into the bathroom. Soon, the sound of water came from inside. Listening to the movement inside, Su Peijian knew that she should leave now. Now that Ling Jing's attitude was there, if she left now, the 2 of them would really be clean in the future. Soon, Ling Jing came out. It was the end of spring, but this guy didn't seem to mind the cold at all. He came out bare-chested. His hair was wet, and there were water droplets dripping down his sturdy chest. They slid down to his waist and were blocked by the thin towel. This guy was that kind of monster. He sat down on the sofa again, picked up the medicinal oil on the coffee table, and was about to pour it on his body again. Su-Peijian stopped him, took the medicinal oil, and poured it on her hand. Looking at the wound on his shoulder, she gently applied the oil and rubbed it. When she touched him, Ling Jing's body shrank. Soon, he stopped moving. She applied the medicine on him and looked at the big mark on it. She didn't know why, but her eyes suddenly felt a little sore. There was an indescribable emotion surging in her chest. The dust on his clothes, the wound on his shoulder, and the fatigue he revealed when he went upstairs just now. She had never lived at the bottom of society, but she had heard and seen it. She could imagine what Ling Jing had encountered in the past few days. She still remembered how arrogant Ling Jing was when they first met. There was a slight, gentle pain in her heart. After applying the medicinal oil for him, she saw that he had his back to her. She closed her eyes, put down the medicine bottle, and reached out to wrap her arms around Ling Jing's waist. Her face was pressed against his back, and the smell of the medicinal oil was a little stimulating. But she could hear Ling Jing's heartbeat through his chest. The sound, like a drum, beat on her heart. At this moment, she gave up all struggle. Chapter 852. Ling Jing, let's be together. The living room was very small, but this sentence seemed to echo in the air for a long time. Ling Jing didn't turn around. He was hugged by Su-Peijian from behind. Because of her words, his body froze there. After a while, he finally turned around and looked at Su-Peijian. At that moment, Su-Peijian saw thousands of stars in his eyes. What did you say? Say it again. Su-Peijian looked at his narrow and seductive eyes. I said, let's be together. She didn't want to deny it, although Lin Feixing was very good. But she still had some feelings for Lin Feixing. But Ling Jing, she didn't know if this was love. But at least she understood that she couldn't treat Ling Jing as a pure passerby. She couldn't really watch Ling Jing disappear from her life like this. The two of them hadn't been together for many days, and it could only be considered a casual marriage. But she found that she was moved by Ling Jing. She wasn't a person who would avoid being shy. Since she was moved, she would give each other a chance. Say it again. Ling Jing's eyes became brighter and brighter. Su-Peijian smiled. It was rare for her to be so indulgent. I said, let's be together. Before she could finish her sentence, Ling Jing had already kissed her. The passionate kiss was passionate and urgent. His hands were on her waist, making her fit perfectly with him. There was still the slightly pungent smell of medicinal oil at the tip of her nose. Su-Peijian felt that the smell of his body after bathing was even more obvious. That poppy-like smell made her a little addicted. She had always been rational and had never been an impulsive person. Especially when it came to feelings, she was very restrained. But now, she felt that it wasn't a bad feeling to be so impulsive. Her body was placed on the small and shabby fabric sofa. She struggled for a while. When she met Ling Jing's almost bloodshot eyes, she couldn't help but feel a little emotional, but she tried her best to hold it in. You're still injured. Don't worry, I won't die. It's my shoulder that's injured, not. The last two words disappeared from her lips. This person, when he was shameless and dirty, really had no limit. But she didn't hate it. She was even a little happy. It wasn't bad to be able to make him lose control like this. The meaning of the word happiness was redefined. Because of Ling Jing's actions, a corner of the collapsed part of her heart was filled up. She did not resist and allowed him to fill in part of the missing space. Or perhaps, he would fill in more in the future. Ling Jing moved back to Rome Garden. His house was too small for Su-Peijian. He didn't want Ling Jing to feel wronged. Rome Garden was too small for her, but at least it was better than his small, run-down house. On the day of Ling Jing's return, He bought a lot of ingredients and asked Xiao Zhao to cook a table full of delicious dishes. He even opened a bottle of red wine that Su Peijian had put in the cabinet. When Su Peijian returned home, she saw a table full of fragrant dishes and a man standing at the table with a pure smile on his face. So grand? Yes. Ling Jing smiled. To celebrate our first official day together. This should be the second day. Yesterday was only the first day. It was rare for Su Peijian to be in a joking mood, so she started joking with him. Ling Jing pulled out a chair for Su Peijian to sit. She sat opposite him and glanced at Ling Jing. He was wearing a black casual shirt and a pair of black casual pants. Black was very suitable for him. This kind of outfit made Ling Jing more seductive. Did you notice? Am I very handsome? Ling Jing returned to his cocky self. Su Peijian was a little helpless, but she didn't deny it. You do have a good face. Just good? Ling Jing was not convinced. Then what do you want to hear? Say I'm handsome. Say I'm the best in the world. You are indeed the best in the world. Su Peijian glanced at him indifferently. You have the thickest skin in the world. You're sad. Ling Jing sat back in his seat and covered his heart with one hand. Su Peijian didn't want to pay attention to him and sat down to eat. She had always been temperate. After 70% full, she stopped eating. She put down the bowl and chopsticks and looked at Ling Jing. In fact, she vaguely felt that this development was too fast. She had made such a decision on the spur of the moment. In fact, although she didn't regret it, there was always a faint uneasiness in her heart. She thought that perhaps it was the aura of a prodigal son on Ling Jing that made her feel uneasy. Ling Jing stopped eating at some point. He put down the bowl, walked to her side, and picked her up. What are you doing? We've finished the red wine and the meal. Naturally, we have to have some dessert. Su Peijian frowned. Ling Jing's indecency was something that she couldn't get used to sometimes. This man was always so frivolous and presumptuous. It was fine if it was only in front of her, but if it was in front of Xiang Kaiping, Su Peijian was shocked to realize that she had actually started to think about her future with Ling Jing. She was shocked by this thought. Her small face was a little pale. Ling Jing saw it and carried her in the direction of the room. Ling Jing, shoo. To celebrate my return, so today, you just have to feel it with your heart. You don't have to say anything. He kissed her lips hard and used all his skills to make her unable to think. Su Peijian's consciousness began to blank out. The last trace of struggle dissipated because of Ling Jing's actions. The following weekend was the weekend. Su Peijian spent 2 days with Ling Jing at Rong Garden. Ling Jing, let go. No matter how much she fooled around, when it came to serious business, Su Peijian wouldn't be willful. Today was Monday. She got up early and planned to go to work. How old are you? Don't be so childish. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing, who was hugging her and refusing to let go. She couldn't continue to put on makeup with him like this. Don't apply it. Ling Jing took the foundation from her hand. You're already very beautiful. You don't need to be more beautiful. Everyone liked to hear compliments, but Su Peijian had heard too many of them. Stop fooling around. Give it back to me. I still have to go to work. She was going to meet a client today. Putting on light makeup was a form of respect for the other party. No. Ling Jing suddenly looked a little aggrieved. I don't want to go to work. I want you to accompany me. Ling Jing. Su Peijian glared at him. He withdrew his hand. She took the foundation from his hand and continued to work with her hands. Ling Jing looked at her from the side. His gaze was focused and eager. Why are you looking at me like that? Because you're beautiful. Su Peijian's movements were very fast. She quickly put on light makeup. She got up, picked up her bag, and was about to leave. From the corner of her eye, she found that Ling Jing had been staring at her. She felt a little helpless. You don't have to do that job. Why don't you come to my company? She said it tactfully, trying to make her tone sound calm. She tried not to provoke his self-esteem. No. Ling Jing refused without thinking. I don't want to. If I go to your company, do you want people to say that I rely on women? Su Peijian stopped talking and stood in front of Ling Jing. Then don't. I'll go to work. You stay at home and think about what you want to do. No matter what you want to do, I'll support you. Why? Ling Jing looked at her and the corners of his mouth raised. Are you going to be a caring sister? If you want to call me sister, I won't object. Su Peijian remembered that she hadn't asked Ling Jing how old he was. You should be younger than me, right? Who said that? I'm definitely older than you. She was talking about age, but Ling Jing looked like he wanted to compete with her. Sometimes, this man was really as childish as a child. Su Peijian didn't want to argue with him. Okay, you're older than me, so let me ask you. Can I go to work now? Give me a kiss before you go. Ling Jing approached her and hugged her waist. He hugged her and kissed her deeply. Su Peijian was a little breathless from his kiss. When he let go of her, she glared at him unhappily. You kissed off my lipstick. Just do it again. Ling Jing smiled quite casually. When he smiled, the corners of his eyes would unconsciously rise. He looked really charming. Su Peijian could feel the emptiness and numbness in her heart. That smile seemed to have been reinvigorated by someone else. This might be the feeling of being moved. She thought that she might really be in love. She was moved by a man who had no money and no power. He was obviously wrong, but she felt that everything was right. Lin Feixing sat in the office of Jinjin department store. After discussing business with Su Peijian, he put down the documents in his hand and looked at Su Peijian. You seem to be very busy these 2 days. I'm fine. Busy? She wasn't busy. It was just that Ling Jing said something about celebrating her return and pulled her into a mess. In the past 2 days, other than calling Xiang Kaiping to tell her that she couldn't go back because she had something to do, the rest of the time, her phone was snatched by Ling Jing and turned off. I called your phone, but it was turned off. If I hadn't gone to your house to look for your mother, would have suspected that you were missing. How could that be? Su Peijian thought about what had happened in the past 2 days and felt a little guilty. She looked up at Lin Feixing. There were some things that she really had to make clear to him. Don't look at me like that. I don't want to investigate your whereabouts. I'm really just worried about you. I know. Su Peijian nodded. Lin Feixing was a good person. She knew that no matter what, this man was very suitable. However, things in this world were like this. Sometimes, what was suitable might not be what you liked. Sometimes, what you liked might not be what you thought was suitable. Although she knew that she was cruel, there were some things that she really had to make clear. Feixing. Go ahead. Let's have a meal together later. I have something to tell you. Lin Feixing looked at Su Peijian's face and suddenly smiled. If you agree to go further with me, we'll go for a meal. If not, you might as well reject me now. He was so smart that Su Peijian didn't know what to say next. Feixing, actually, it's okay. We're both adults. If you have something to say, just say it. I can accept it. After all, I'm not a child anymore. Su Peijian smiled at his words, but that smile was a little awkward. I've thought about it seriously. I think that we might not be very suitable. So, is it because we're not suitable, or is it because you like someone else? Lin Feixing looked straight into Su Peijian's eyes. Su Peijian suddenly smiled. How could she forget that although Lin Feixing was a good person, he was also a businessman? You can tell? Sorry, Lin Feixing didn't finish his sentence. He just looked at Su Peijian's neck. Only then did she realize what Lin Feixing was referring to. She had been entangled with Ling Jing for 2 days. One could imagine what kind of marks that man would leave on her body. She gritted her teeth secretly. This wasn't the time to be angry. I'm sorry. Su Peijian rarely experienced such an embarrassing moment. She was used to being straightforward. But she had always been quick to take revenge. She had promised to give Lin Feixing a chance, but she had done such a thing. She felt sorry for Lin Feixing. Don't say sorry. Lin Feixing spread his hands. Actually, I had a feeling before that you might have someone in your heart. But I didn't give up and wanted to give myself a chance. I didn't expect you to have already made your choice. Su Peijian was speechless. She was indeed unkind in this matter. Feixing, I'm really sorry. You're a very good person. Stop. Lin Feixing raised his hand. Forget it if you don't choose me. You still want to give me the good person card. I can't tolerate that. Su Peijian couldn't say anything else. Lin Feixing stood up. Forget it. You didn't choose me. You didn't have good taste. Yes. Su Peijian smiled and stood up as well. I admit it. Tell me, in what way is that man better than me? Seeing Su Peijian's thoughtful expression, he suddenly smiled. What's wrong? Is he better than me in every way? That's not it. Su Peijian couldn't say things that went against her heart. In the eyes of the secular world, he really isn't better than you. But sometimes, some things really can't be calculated according to the conditions. I understand. Lin Feixing nodded. You don't have to say any more. If you say any more, I'll suffer internal injuries. Then. Su Peijian looked at the documents on the table. The cooperation should still go on happily, right? Of course. Lin Feixing looked at her with a sad expression. This person is already empty. You can't let my money be empty too, right? Definitely not. Su Peijian really liked Lin Feixing's sense of humor. No matter what, thank you. If you really want to thank me, then cooperate with our company a few more times and let us make more money. I promise. After seeing Lin Feixing off, Su Peijian sat down in her seat. She took out a mirror from her bag and looked at her neck. Sure enough, there was a very clear and obvious kiss mark on her neck. She rubbed her forehead as she felt a headache coming on. Ling Jing, this guy, really. It seemed that she needed to remind him not to leave marks on her body next time. Definitely not. At night. When Ling Jing approached, Su Peijian raised her hand and covered his mouth. Oh, what? Ling Jing took her hand away and lowered his head to look at her face. You don't want me to touch you? Chapter 853. Say it. I'm listening. As Ling Jing spoke, he kissed Su Peijian's neck again. Su Peijian firmly pushed him away again and sat up. What are you doing? They were taking a shower together in the bathroom just now. He wanted to do it again, but she refused, saying that it was too tiring to do it in the bathroom. He changed the venue now, but she wouldn't let him. Ling Jing was a little dissatisfied. He turned his head and was about to continue. Su Peijian held his face and forced him to look at her. Woman, what are you doing? Ling Jing, stop it. I'm serious. Yes. Say it. I'm listening. Be serious. She waved away his hand, which was about to make trouble again. Ling Jing sat up straight because of her attitude. Ling Jing, I promise to be with you. It's because I have feelings for you. I want to give you a chance, and I also want to give myself a chance. She had never loved anyone other than her family, whether it was Qiu Yanba, whom she was engaged to, or Hui Yifan. Her heart was half empty. And she wanted to try the feeling of not being so empty. Ling Jing. I hope you can respect me. How did I not respect you? Ling Jing felt wronged. He raised his eyebrows and couldn't hide the grievance on his face. Well. Su Peijian put on a thick layer of foundation on her neck to let herself walk out. I remember I told you not to leave marks on my body, especially on such an obvious place. She was actually wearing a shirt today. The collar was high, but Lin Feixing still saw it. She even had reason to suspect that Ling Jing did it on purpose. Ling Jing looked at the mark. There was no guilt on his face, as Su Peijian thought. He even smiled proudly. I just realized. TSK, so beautiful. There was no way to communicate anymore. Su Peijian looked at him. Ling Jing, I'm serious. I'm serious too. Ling Jing pointed at her mark. I think it's like a rose, as beautiful as you. It's so beautiful. Su Peijian rubbed her eyebrows. I have to go to work. I have to appear in front of people. I don't want others to give me this impression. It's not appropriate. Especially if a client or collaborator sees it, it will leave a very bad impression. Ling Jing, if you really like me as much as you say, I want you to respect me. After a moment of silence, the smile on Ling Jing's face disappeared. Are you angry? Why can't this person grasp the main point? Su Peijian sighed. Forget it. She regarded Ling Jing as a child. A boy younger than her, and psychologically immature. I'm not angry. I just want to tell you that the relationship between a man and a woman should be based on equality and mutual respect. This principle was like saying, I respect you, and I will accept everything about you with the greatest tolerance. I also hope that you can respect me, respect my bottom line and perseverance. I also respect that my life circle might not be the same as yours. Do you understand? Su Peijian spoke very seriously. She was the daughter of a noble family that Li Qianxue had personally educated. There were some things that she had her bottom line and her insistence on. They could joke around in private, they could be together, and they could even be in a relationship. Even if Ling Jing really didn't want to work for the rest of her life and just wanted to live like this, she could understand. Although she did not agree with that. This society was very diverse. She had experienced the ups and downs of life. She could bear different things and different people in this world. Since she had chosen Ling Jing, who had moved her heart, she did not want to break up easily. She had also considered the possibility of the two of them in the future. However, whether the two of them could go to the end did not depend on her choice and persistence alone. It also depended on the other party. She did not have too many requirements for Ling Jing. However, the most basic requirement for a lover was to respect and treat them equally. If she could not do this, she did not mind kicking Ling Jing out now. Her eyes betrayed her attitude. Ling Jing suddenly stopped talking. His lips were pursed into a line, and he seemed unhappy. He did not speak, and Su Peijian did not speak either. She had her bottom line and persistence. In some aspects, she would never give in. The air was frozen. Ling Jing looked at her for a long time, then suddenly reached out and hugged her. I did it on purpose. Rubbing his face against hers, Ling Jing looked up at her. That pair of devilishly beautiful phoenix eyes were now tinged with a tinge of sadness. You are so beautiful and so capable. I think there must be a lot of men pursuing you. The one last time was your suitor. Wasn't he? I did this to let them know that you are mine now. Mine. Su Peijian looked at him and suddenly thought of Su Yusen. Seriously speaking, although Su Yusen was 7 or 8 years younger than her, he was not as childish as Ling Jing. On the contrary, Su Yusen knew what he wanted from a very young age. For example, he once had the chance to skip a grade, but he didn't want it. He said that he preferred to enjoy life. Another example was that Su Yusen had the chance to go abroad, but he felt that he should go to university in China first. He wanted to experience the atmosphere of a domestic university. If he wanted to go abroad, if he wanted to study, he would have the opportunity anytime. He was now preparing for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's graduate school. Su Qinghui had mentioned this to her before. Ling Jing was the complete opposite of Su Yusen. In fact, Ling Jing was older than Su Yusen, but in some aspects, he was really childish. Thinking about it, it was actually good. The adult world was full of twists and turns. People like Ling Jing who were simple and direct were really rare. What was more precious in this world than a pure and innocent heart? Ling Jing, let others know that it is not about such a method of proof. In fact, in my heart, I have already chosen you. This is the biggest affirmation. We don't need other people's recognition. You don't need other people's recognition. She thought for a moment, raised her hand to touch his cheek, and pressed her forehead against his, as if she was taking care of a little brother. After all, people live in this world. They don't need everyone to admit it. They don't need everyone to admit it. Then why are you still talking about me? Since he didn't care about other people's opinions, why should he care about a hickey on his neck? This is a matter of image. Su Peijian didn't think the two were comparable. It's harder for women to survive in this world than it is for men. If you let me go out with such a hickey to talk to people about work, have you ever thought about what others will think of me? Yes. I really don't care about other people's opinions. But this is the most basic respect for people, the most basic courtesy when talking to people about business. The meaning is different. Can you understand? It was rare for her to be so patient. She even forgot when was the last time she spoke so patiently to someone. She was beautiful, and she gave people the feeling of being beautiful and arrogant. At this moment, she held Ling Jing's chin with both hands and looked at him fixedly. Her eyes were soft, and her facial features were gentle. For a moment, Ling Jing actually felt motherly from Su Peijian. His heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, he didn't dare to look Su Peijian in the eye. He shook his head and pulled her hand down. Okay. I understand. I won't do this next time, okay? Don't be angry. I'm not angry. Su Peijian looked at his tone, which was exactly like that of a child, and still felt a little helpless. Ling Jing, living in this world, if you can always ignore other people's opinions and do as you please, it's a very good thing. But occasionally, we still need to take into account other people's opinions, not to please them, but to make our own life smoother. I don't know what your family was like when you were a child. But I think there are some things you should learn to understand and accept. That way, you can become more and more mature. Ling Jing was silent at this moment. He pulled her hand and drew circles. Maturity doesn't mean that we blindly obey the laws of this world. It also means that we have learned to make ourselves as happy and comfortable as possible under the existence of these laws. Ling Jing fixed his eyes on Su Peijian. Her clothes had been taken off by him just now. Now she was preaching to him without touching anything. But he seemed to see a pair of wings behind her, the wings of an angel. This kind of contradictory beauty made his eyes dim. He suddenly turned over and pressed Su Peijian under his body. His eyes, which were gradually turning red, revealed his current mood. The movements of his hands became a little urgent. Ling Jing? Okay, I'll listen to you. Ling Jing lowered his head to kiss her, and his voice disappeared into her lips. I will definitely make myself as comfortable as possible, so, there was no need to say the rest, Su Peijian understood. She was a little helpless, but she didn't stop him. She found that she was quite patient with Ling Jing. There were some things that she could let him change slowly. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian, and his slightly frowned eyebrows showed his current mood. The expression of wanting to say something had been hanging on his face for a long time. Finally, it was Su Peijian who took the initiative to speak. Mom, if you have something to say, just say it. We are mother and daughter, you don't have to feel embarrassed in front of me. I just want to ask, what's wrong with Feishing? Yesterday, when she went out to buy vegetables with Xiaoya, she met Lin Feishing. She asked Lin Feishing to come to her house, but she didn't expect Lin Feishing to say that he and Su Peijian weren't together now. Didn't you promise me before that you would give him a chance? After all, he was such a good man, and he didn't care about Su Peijian's past. It was really hard to find him. Mom. I gave him a chance. Su Peijian really did. However, she didn't feel anything for Lin Feixing. Some people didn't appear early or late, but because that person happened to appear at this time. But, you haven't even been together for a few days, Mom, feelings are not about the length of time, but the moment of heartbeat. It felt a little strange to say this in front of Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian felt a little uncomfortable, and she cleared her throat. Mom, anyway, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. It was impossible for her and Lin Feixing. In fact, even without Ling Jing, she wouldn't have feelings for Lin Feixing. Peijian. How could she not worry? Xiang Kaiping really felt that Lin Feixing was a very good person. Do you know that Feixing is really a very good person? Mom, I said that I know he is a good person, but no matter how good he is, he's not the kind of person I like. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything. Her expression was conflicted again. Su Peijian put her hand on her forehead, starting to have a headache again. Mom, really? You see, I'm such a grown-up. Don't treat me like a child. Su Peijian tried to soften her tone. In fact, Su Peijian was really helpless towards Xiang Kaiping in some aspects. Mom. Believe me. I really know what I'm doing. Xiang Kaiping nodded. What else could she do if she didn't believe her? It was Su Peijian's own choice anyway. When Su Peijian returned to Rome Garden, she had just parked the car when she ran into Ling Jing, who had just returned. Ling Jing got out of the Cadillac. His face was cold, and he didn't seem very happy. He was wearing a custom-made suit. With a model's figure, he gave people a particularly different feeling in a suit. Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to get out of the car. She looked at Ling Jing and suddenly had a feeling. Ling Jing's appearance seemed to be his original appearance. On the other side, Ling Jing, who was about to enter the elevator, found Su Peijian's car. He smiled and walked in her direction. You're back. The smile on his face was too cheerful. It was as if the cold face of Ling Jing just now was her illusion. What's wrong? Ling Jing met her gaze and glanced at himself. Do you think I'm very handsome today? Su Peijian didn't answer his question. She looked at Ling Jing, who looked very formal in his formal suit, like a prince walking out of a castle. She frowned slightly. What have you been doing? Nothing. Ling Jing's expression changed slightly, but only for a moment. I have an interview today. Ling Jing smiled and pulled Su Peijian into his arms. So I'm dressed like this. What do you think? Don't I look very handsome? Interview? Yes? Ling Jing nodded. There's an interview this afternoon. So I wore it like this. Su Peijian didn't say anything. Ling Jing had worn a suit before, but when he wore it, he unbuttoned his shirt and rolled up his sleeves, looking sloppy. It was completely different from the aura he had when he got out of the car. She seemed to have seen this kind of aura before. It was as if she had seen it on someone before. What's wrong? Ling Jing had a very important meeting today, and he had to attend it himself. However, he didn't expect to talk to those old foxes for a long time, and then it didn't end. What was even more ridiculous was that his good brothers, 1, 2, 3, 4, all rushed to make trouble for him. Looking at Su Peijian, he naturally thought of his gloomy mood when he got out of the car just now. Another car drove into the parking lot. Su Peijian had no intention of standing here and arguing with Ling Jing. She glanced at him and signaled him to go upstairs first. Ling Jing followed behind her, and the two of them entered the elevator together. There was a camera in the elevator. Ling Jing wanted to come over and put his arm around Su Peijian's waist, but she gently took his hand away. What's wrong with you? Chapter 854. Su Peijian was silent and let the elevator take them upstairs. After getting out of the elevator, entering the door, and closing the door, she finally had time to look at Ling Jing. Her eyes were probing, sizing, and a little thoughtful. Ling Jing, who are you? I'm Ling Jing. Ling Jing took a step forward and opened his hands, as if to hug her. No. It felt wrong. Su Peijian frowned slightly, but Ling Jing stepped forward and hugged her tightly. I feel so bad today. He hugged her tightly, and his masculine scent hit her face. I failed the interview today. You didn't even comfort me. Su Peijian was stunned and looked up at him. What did you say? I said, I failed the interview today, and you didn't even comfort me. His aggrieved tone made Su Peijian feel a little better. Interview? He seemed to have said it just now. But she felt that something was wrong. I went for the interview today, but I didn't succeed. Why didn't you tell me before? I thought if I could succeed, wouldn't I be able to give you a surprise? I didn't expect. He didn't finish his words, but Su Peijian could already understand what he meant. He looked gloomy because he failed the interview. Are you still angry? Ling Jing hugged her and looked at her face. What are you angry about? Nothing. Su Peijian shook her head. Maybe she was really thinking too much. What position did you interview for? Real estate agent. Ling Jing blinked. And then they said I was not sincere enough. He leaned in front of Su Peijian and stared at her with his beautiful almond-shaped eyes. Am I not sincere enough? Su Peijian's doubts just now dissipated. Looking at Ling Jing's sloppy appearance, she didn't know how to tell him. Ling Jing. I'm so sincere. Look, I even went there in a suit. Su Peijian's brows furrowed again. Don't tell me that you wore this suit and drove your car to the interview. Yes. Can't I? Su Peijian held her forehead and looked at Ling Jing. For the first time, she asked him seriously, have you had any experience in interviews before? Yes, wasn't it the warehouse manager last time? Did you wear a suit when you interviewed for the warehouse manager position? No. Ling Jing shook her head and said quite frankly, I passed by that door last time and happened to see it, so I was interviewed. As for what to wear, I forgot. Forget it. Su Peijian didn't want to talk about it anymore. In a place like a warehouse, who would care what you wore? However, the agent was different. He was dressed in such a glamorous outfit. Which company would want him? Who wouldn't think that he might be some rich second-generation kid who was just here to play for a few days and experience life? What happened to you? It's okay. Su Peijian knew that this was a huge project. It would take more than a day or two to make Ling Jing understand. Forget it. Let's eat. Don't count it. Tell me, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. Su Peijian didn't know how to respond. Forget it. Think carefully about what you want to do. You mean, it's not suitable for me to go out and find a job? It's not that it's not suitable. Su Peijian was thinking about how to explain it. I just think that it's not good for you to do whatever you want now. Why don't you calm down and think carefully about what you want to do in the future? Okay. Ling Jing smiled and leaned over, kissing her on the lips. I'll listen to you. After saying that, he hugged her tightly, looking like a big panda. Seeing him like this, Su Peijian's anger and suspicion disappeared. Ling Jing, whose chin is resting on her shoulder, has a smug smile in her eyes. Today's operation. Full marks. Su Peijian sat in the office and read a few professional analysis reports in the industry. In the end, she put all the reports on the table and didn't pick them up again. In fact, these professions looked good, but none of them were suitable for Ling Jing. With Ling Jing's personality, it wasn't a big problem for him to deal with people. However, he looked sloppy, but in fact, he was full of pride, and he was a little conceited. In her opinion, such a person should be his own boss. But his current ability, Su Peijian rubbed between her eyebrows, feeling a headache coming on. She found that she was actually like an elder, starting to worry about a man's future. In fact, the most important thing was to reassure Xiang Kaiping. As far as she was concerned, it didn't matter at all. Thinking of Ling Jing, who was becoming more and more like a child with her these days, Su Peijian felt a headache coming on. When she got home, Su Peijian found that Ling Jing hadn't come back yet, and the room was dark. Where did this guy go? Su Peijian turned on the light, only to find that it seemed to be broken. She tried several times but couldn't turn on the light. Thinking that maybe the fuse was broken, she was about to check it herself and see if she should ask someone to fix it. Suddenly, there was a bright light in front of her. She instinctively narrowed her eyes, and when she recovered, she found that there was a clown wearing a mask standing in front of her. Su Peijian was startled by the sudden appearance of the clown, and instinctively stepped back. Her body was pressed against the door, and her hand reached for the door handle. Just as she was about to quickly escape, she suddenly found that something was wrong. The clown didn't pounce on her, but stopped there, and reached out to her. The clown's hands were wearing gloves, but she also reacted at this time. Instead of holding the clown's hand, she crossed her arms in front of her chest and stared at the clown. The clown seemed to be very dissatisfied with her action, and he pulled her into his arms. He snapped his fingers, and the music started. She was held by him, and they danced in the living room. Su Peijian had specially learned how to dance. The clown's dance steps were not bad. The living room wasn't big, and the two of them couldn't perform very well. But it was barely enough. Looking at the face in front of her, who was wearing a mask, Su Peijian got used to it after spinning in a circle. "What are you doing?" The person under the clown mask didn't respond, and she was held and spun in a circle again. The music continued, and finally, the music stopped. "Happy holidays." Ling Jing's voice sounded. He took off the mask and smiled brightly at Su Peijian. "It's you?" Although she knew it was him, Su Peijian still felt a little uncomfortable looking at Ling Jing in the clown costume. "What are you doing?" He was dressed as a clown, and he was dancing with her. Was it his birthday today? "Happy holidays." Ling Jing smiled brightly, picked up a bouquet of roses from the coffee table next to him, and placed it in front of Su Peijian. Su Peijian looked at the big bouquet of flowers, and then looked at his incongruous clown costume. It was really a little inexplicable. What holiday? Why don't I know about it? Valentine's Day had long passed, and Chinese Valentine's Day hadn't come yet. Even Labor Day was a month away. So she didn't know what holiday he was referring to. April Fool's Day. Su Peijian was shocked by these 4 words. She looked at Ling Jing blankly, and it took her a long time to find her voice. April Fool's Day? Yes. Ling Jing threw the mask aside, stepped forward, and put his arms around her waist. "I'm with you, so naturally, I have to remember every meaningful day. Including April Fool's Day, Labor Day, and Children's Day in the future." Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing in front of her, and really didn't know what to say. "You're dressed like this? To celebrate April Fool's Day?" "Yes." Ling Jing nodded, and with a matter-of-fact expression, he said, "Actually, I wanted to scare you by pretending to be a ghost, but I was afraid that you would be scared, and my heart would ache. I could only dress as a clown. How is it? Did it scare you?" Su Peijian rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She was thinking about what kind of way to find for Ling Jing in the company, but Ling Jing was thinking about what to do at home to scare her by pretending to be a clown. How could this person be so childish? And it just so happened that he was so childish and cute. "You scared me." Just now, he suddenly jumped out and really scared her. "Really?" Ling Jing's expression changed. "I've already picked a lot of them. This mask is the most gentle one. I'm not talking about a clown, but..." Su Peijian looked at him, but in the end, she didn't say a word. There was a trace of a slight touch in her heart that was constantly expanding. Ling Jing might have used the wrong method, but who could say that April Fool's Day wasn't a holiday? There would never be a shortage of smart people in this world, but few people would be willing to put themselves in the position of a fool. Ling Jing could dress as a clown for her. There was no other thought in her mind now, and she completely forgot the scare just now. She only felt that Ling Jing, who tried so hard to dress as a clown, was really cute. Thank you. She glanced at the roses in front of her. The flowers are very beautiful. Of course, I kept an eye on the shop assistant and let her pick them one by one. I even cut the stem at the bottom myself. Thank you. This wasn't the first bouquet of flowers Su Peijian had received, but it was a bouquet of flowers that Ling Jing had given her. She raised her head to look at him, and there was finally a hint of a smile in her eyes. It's very beautiful. I like it very much. It's good that you like it. Ling Jing picked her up along with the flowers. Since you like it, can you let me like it too? What are you doing? Su Peijian's body was suspended in the air. Let me put the flowers down first. No. Ling Jing shook his head. These flowers can't be put down. I have a use for them. What? I want to spread these flowers all over the bed, and then do it with you on the petals. Just imagining Ling Jing's words made Su Peijian's face heat up. This bastard. Can't you think of something else? Of course I do. Ling Jing didn't hide his indecency and shamelessness at all. There are a lot of petals. After making the bed, there are some leftover petals that can be sprinkled into the bathtub. The two of us can take a petal bath together. Su Peijian didn't know what to say. She only felt that not only her face was hot, but even her body was a little hot. Thinking of the scene that Ling Jing had described, she actually felt a little expectant. Don't deny it. You're also looking forward to it, aren't you? Ling Jing had a naughty smile on his face. When the corners of his mouth curled up, it was full of evil. Ling Jing, he carried her into the room. Later, as he said, Ling Jing did. The petals of the rose were used to their intended purpose. In the end, Su Peijian was so tired that she couldn't get out of bed. In the morning, Su Peijian slept lazily on the bed. She didn't want to move. Her body was soft from head to toe. It was sore, soft, and uncomfortable. She glared at Ling Jing next to her. There was one really bad thing about this guy. He didn't know how to control himself. Ling Jing. Ling Jing grabbed her finger and kissed it. Her skin was so good. From head to toe, her skin, which was carefully maintained, was beautiful. Tell me. Don't come. I'm very tired. I think you're in good spirits. I'm serious. I'm serious, too. Ling Jing was halfway through his actions. When he met Su Peijian's eyes, he put her hand down. You can't blame me. Blame yourself. You're too seductive. I can't help it. This person really never had more than 3 minutes of serious time. Su Peijian was very lazy today. She didn't want to get up to make breakfast. She called Zhou Mei and told her that she would be coming to the company later. She turned over and let herself snuggle into Ling Jing's arms. Ling Jing, have you thought about what you're going to do? It had been a few days since he failed the interview. He had been at home every day, doing these things. Although she was touched, as a man, it really wasn't a long-term solution. Previously, Ling Jing worked as a warehouse manager in a warehouse near his home. Later, when she saw the injuries on his body, she didn't let him go again. In fact, she didn't mean to look down on the warehouse manager. She just felt that it was really not suitable for Ling Jing to do this job with his conditions. However, it was obviously not suitable for him to not work. After all, Ling Jing was too energetic. Instead of going to work, she focused all her energy on herself. She really couldn't take it anymore. I haven't thought about it yet. Ling Jing blinked his eyes with a casual attitude. He really didn't expect that a few words he said casually would be so easy to believe. Su Peijian actually believed him so easily. TSK, thinking about it seriously, there really wasn't much sense of accomplishment. He couldn't wait to know what kind of expression Sue Pasian would have on the day he exposed her real wooden eyes. It was really exciting to think about it. However, before that, he had to make her fall in love with him wholeheartedly. I've also tried, but I really don't know what I can do. Why don't you give me some advice? Sue Pasian was silent. She looked at Ling Jing's appearance very seriously. With his ability, it was not easy to find an easy job now. However, his appearance was good. Perhaps he could go in a certain direction. She just didn't know if he was willing or not. Have you ever thought about being a model or an entertainer? After all, your appearance is not bad. Although he thought that if Ling Jing took that path, he would appear in front of more people, it was indeed a more suitable path for him. I don't want to. Ling Jing refused without thinking. What kind of joke was this? He, the dignified young master of the Ling family, was going to act coquettishly and be a dessert for others? Looking at Sue Pasian's somewhat puzzled eyes, his tone softened. Being an entertainer is not good at all. Not only do I have to be exposed to the public, but I also have no private life. And that industry is very messy. I don't want to go. Sue Pasian nodded. This was also a problem. When she was in Lin City, she had seen a lot of it. Chapter 855. Then what do you want to do? Afraid that Ling Jing would think too much, she added, I don't have to urge you to work, but people have to have something to do when they are alive. After all, idling around every day isn't a long-term solution. She doesn't mind if her man has a job or how much money he earns. But if Ling Jing doesn't even have a formal job, Xiang Kaiping will be worried. Xiang Kaiping had worked hard for half of her life, although it was impossible for her to really interfere with her choices. However, she had to at least make Xiang Kaiping feel that the man she had chosen was reliable. If Xiang Kaiping found out that the man she found was a good-for-nothing hooligan, Xiang Caiping's high blood pressure and heart disease would be triggered. Ling Jing circled her waist and seemed to be thinking very seriously. Sue Pasian didn't rush him. After all, it wasn't something that could be done in a day or two. Wrapping her waist in his arms, Ling Jing's hand caressed her waist very casually. How about I become a pastry chef? A pastry chef? Sue Pasian had never thought about that. Why would you want to do that? The last time I went to the restaurant, I saw that you seemed to like the cake there. If I learn how to make pastries, I can make them for you next time. Sue Pasian paused for a moment. The cake from that restaurant was indeed delicious. It tasted really good. She didn't expect that Ling Jing would take it to heart just by tasting a few more mouthfuls. She pursed her lips and suddenly smiled. Sure. It was pretty good. It's a pretty good profession. Then it's decided. Ling Jing winked at her. I'm going to find a cake shop and learn baking. Seeing that Sue Pasian was silent, he held her hand. What do you think? Was it really okay? If you don't like it, why don't you tell me what to do? But I'm not an artist. Sue Pasian saw the fawning look in his eyes and shook her head. No, I think it's pretty good. I'll take this one. Won't you dislike it? Of course not. There was no distinction between high and low professions. Moreover, she was not short of money. It was good that Ling Jing had something to do, but she could afford to support him if he had nothing to do. Most importantly, it would be good if he could find something he liked to do. Go and learn. Once you've learned it, you'll have to learn it. I'm investing in a pastry bakery. When the time comes, you'll be your own boss. Okay. Ling Jing grabbed her hand and kissed her fingertips. That's settled. When Sue Pasian walked out of the company, it was not yet time to get off work. She left early today to pick up Ling Jing and pick up a gift for her. Ling Jing came back yesterday and said that he found a dessert shop and started to work today. To celebrate his first day at work, Sue Pasian wanted to give him a gift. Sue Pasian wanted to laugh at the thought of Ling Jing dressing up as a clown just to celebrate April Fool's Day. In fact, she didn't feel surprised at all. Instead, she felt frightened. But for a man to have such intentions, she was really touched. Thinking of Ling Jing's childish look, she really felt a little conflicted. What should I give her? Lost in her thoughts, she unknowingly went downstairs. He walked out of the elevator, intending to go to the boutique department. However, she heard someone calling her name. Peijian? Su Peijian was no stranger to that voice. She turned around and saw Su Qingsang behind her. Peijian. Su Qingsang was holding the hand of a little girl who looked about 1 year old. The little girl looked like she was carved from jade and was very cute. Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Su Qingsang to call her. Yes. After responding, she stood there. She didn't take a step forward, didn't leave, and didn't call Su Qingsang's sister. Compared to her coldness, Su Qingsang's attitude was much more amiable. She picked up the pink little girl in her arms and let her look at Su Peijian. Come. Nian Nian, call me aunt. Su Peijian was stunned because of this sentence. The little girl didn't seem to have seen her before and was very curious. She blinked her big eyes and looked at her. Call me aunt. Nian Nian. Aunt. Nian Nian was more than 1 year old. He could say some simple words, and he could also say a few simple sentences. Su Peijian suddenly didn't know how to react because the other party called her aunt. She stared blankly at the little girl in front of her. The little girl was very beautiful and had perfectly inherited all the advantages of her parents. When she called people in a childish voice, she was very cute. She was so soft and cute that people wanted to hold her in their hands and love her. Do you want to hug her? Su Qingsang smiled at her when she stared at Nian Nian like this. She carried Nian Nian and took a step forward. Nian Nian, do you want to let me hug you? Nian Nian's little face frowned. She looked at Su Peijian and then at Su Qingsang. Finally, she nodded and reached out to Su Peijian. Aunt. Hug. Su Peijian stood still. She was stunned, as if she had been frightened. However, the moment Nian Nian reached out, she hugged her into her arms. It was very soft, a very small pink ball, and there seemed to be a milky fragrance on it. She swallowed her saliva, not sure if she could hold it firmly. She felt inexplicably flustered. You have to do this. Put this hand here, and this hand here. Su Peijian hugged the child with a subtle expression. After hugging her for less than a minute, she returned Nian Nian to Su Qingsang. Actually, it doesn't matter. The child isn't that delicate. Su Qingsang took her daughter back. Su Peijian didn't reply. She rubbed her nose and looked at Nian Nian uncertainly. Aren't there two? She heard that Su Qingsang gave birth to twins. Where was the other one? Think about it. It's very noisy. It's so naughty at such a young age. His father is carrying him in the children's area over there. I was holding Nian Nian's diapers just now. I'm going to look for them now. Then, you go ahead. Su Peijian didn't think she had anything to say to Su Qingsang, but Su Qingsang was in high spirits. Peijian. Yes? It's not very convenient for me to carry the child today. If you don't mind, let's find a cafe to sit down and chat for a while. Afraid that Su Peijian would overthink, Su Qingsang added, I mean, there are some things that I might need to let you know. She knew that Su Peijian already had a boyfriend. However, old Master Hua finally relented and pleaded with Hua Jinyao to let Hua Yifan out early. After Hua Yifan came out, he would probably come to look for Su Peijian. She knew that Su Peijian had a boyfriend, but she had no doubt that Hua Yifan would go to look for Su Peijian when he came out. Talk. Su Peijian frowned. I don't think I have anything to talk about with you. As she spoke, she noticed that the little ball in Su Qingsang's arms was staring at her, so her tone softened a little. Some things are in the past. I won't think about it again. Some things are done, and I won't regret it. If you want to hear my confession, there's no need. I've already paid the price. If you feel sorry for me, there's even less need. I don't remember if I pitied you when you were an illegitimate daughter. Peijin. Su Qingsang wasn't angry because of her words. She hugged Nian Nian tightly in her arms. What are you thinking about? I'm your sister. Can't we sit down and have a chat? I also wanted to ask you, how has Auntie been recently? She had always felt guilty towards Xiang Kaiping. But now, in order not to make Li Qianxua sad, and in order not to let Su Peijin think too much, it really wasn't convenient for her to see Xiang Kaiping. Pretty good. Her health is good, and she's in good spirits. Recently, she seems to have fallen in love with watching a palace drama. Pretty good. That's good. Su Qingsang looked at Nian Nian, who was wriggling in her arms, and listened to her mumble the word miss. She knew that she was going to look for her brother. Since you don't have time, then next time. I'll take her to see her brother first. Su Peijin nodded slightly in response and watched Su Qingsang leave in front of her. She stood there in a daze. She couldn't tell what she was feeling. It wasn't jealousy, nor was it sadness. It was just a little confused. In the end, she still couldn't not care. In the end, there would still be some dark thoughts, feeling that she had stolen everything from her. She clenched her fists and chased these paranoid and dark thoughts out of her mind. She knew that she couldn't let herself continue like this. You've already paid the price once, so you can't do it again. Su Peijin told herself that, then turned around and continued to walk towards the boutique department. However, Su Qingsang's daughter's pink little face suddenly flashed through her mind. She had to admit that her genes were really strong. That little pink ball was indeed soft and cute. She wondered what that child would be like if she had a child one day. Would it be like her, or like Su Peijin, who realized what she was thinking, quickly shook the thought away. She was really crazy. Ling Jing was a child now. How could she dare to believe that he could shoulder the responsibility of being a father? However, there was a voice in her heart that told her that sometimes, she couldn't judge a book by its cover. Thinking of Ling Jing's act of pretending to be a clown to please her, Su Peijin suddenly felt that if Ling Jing really became a father, perhaps he would also be a good father. However, it was really too early to think about this now. Su Peijin sat in the car and waited for Ling Jing to come out of the bakery opposite. It was already the end of spring, but Rong City was still slightly cold. She had asked Ling Jing before, and Ling Jing said that he worked in this bakery. After waiting for about 15 minutes, she didn't see Ling Jing come out. She had sent Ling Jing a message half an hour ago. She was afraid that he was working, so she specially asked him if he had time. At that time, Ling Jing said that he had time. Su Peijin looked at the time again. Ling Jing hadn't come out yet. This bakery was very close to Rome Garden. She looked at the time and saw that another 15 minutes had passed. That meant that it had been almost an hour since she called Ling Jing and he appeared. She thought about it and opened the car door. Just as she was about to get out of the car, she saw Ling Jing running all the way. He ran so fast that the open black casual jacket flew to both sides because of his movements. When he saw her, he seemed to show a bright smile, but he was panting. Did you wait long? He panted as he got into Su Peijin's car. Su Peijin looked at him and frowned slightly. She took out a bottle of water from the side and handed it to him. Why are you running like this? People who don't know would think that you went to participate in the 100-meter race. Wasn't that right? He was supposed to be at the company dealing with business. Unexpectedly, Su Peijin called and said that she would pick him up from work. His company was about an hour's drive from Rome Garden. He hurried and didn't encounter a traffic jam. No, it's just a little hot in the kitchen. He pretended to fan his face. Su Peijin looked at him with a little heartache and a little helpless. She directly took a tissue in front of him and wiped the sweat on his face. If you're not free, I can wait for a while. You can tell me. Her movements were rare. In her heart, because Ling Jing was younger than her, she would always be more tolerant of him. In addition to being moved, there was also tolerance. It was also because of her experience that she wouldn't care about these small things. She really didn't care. I was afraid that you would wait for me for too long. Ling Jing held her hand and let her wipe his sweat with a tissue. Finally, he grabbed her hand and said, "If I let you wait for too long, my heart will ache." Su Peijian glanced at him, wiped his sweat, and handed him a box. "This is a gift for you." "That good?" Ling Jing looked at the box. "Why is there a gift? What day is it?" "To celebrate your first day at work." Ling Jing held the box and looked at Su Peijian, who had a gentle expression. He suddenly leaned over and kissed her lips hard. After all, they were on the side of the road. Su Peijian pushed his body. He let go of her after kissing her enough and pressed his forehead against hers. "Personally, I prefer to celebrate in another way." This guy, really, Su Peijian didn't want to talk anymore. "Let's go eat. How about I treat you to Japanese food? I know a restaurant that serves good eel rice." "Okay." Ling Jing watched her start the car. He sat back in his seat, squeezed the box in his hand, and took out his phone. "What are you doing?" "Taking a picture." Ling Jing smiled at her. "To celebrate the first gift you gave me." Su Peijian couldn't help but smile. In fact, Ling Jing was really good. He was happy, and he was unhappy. His emotions were very obvious, just like a child. The moment she smiled, Ling Jing looked at her profile as she concentrated on driving, took a picture of her, and matched it with the box. However, he didn't post it on WeChat. The moment he put down his phone, he sent a message to Gu Xiu. His car was parked at the back door of the bakery, and he asked Gu Xiu to drive his car back to Rhone Garden. This was not a long-term solution. He had to think of a way to stop Su Peijian from looking for him next time. He suddenly turned his face to look at Su Peijian. In fact, she had taken the bait. He had achieved his goal, and he could leave. But, for some reason, there was a trace of hesitation in his heart. He told himself that it was because Su Peijian hadn't fallen in love with him yet, not completely and completely. He wanted to wait until she completely fell in love with him, and then he would unveil that layer of paper. At that time, it would be his complete victory. At that time, how would she react? Chapter 856. Why are you looking at me? Even though Su Peijian was driving, she could feel Ling Jing's gaze. "I'm looking at you because you're beautiful." Ling Jing's face became a bit frivolous. "I've never seen a woman more beautiful than you. Of course I have to look at you." Su Peijian wouldn't believe a word of Ling Jing's words. To him, it was possible that she was the prettiest one among all the female sugar moms who had supported him in the past. For some reason, thinking that Ling Jing had had other women, she felt a little jealous. Forget it, it was meaningless to care about the past now, as long as they only had each other in the future. They went to the Japanese restaurant that Su Peijian mentioned. After dinner, they went to watch a movie. The movie was an American sci-fi blockbuster, and it was very long. It was very late when they returned home. Su Peijian took a shower and lay down directly to sleep, but Ling Jing didn't let her sleep. She didn't know why that guy was very energetic today, but he pestered her several times. Later, she kept saying that she had to go to work, so he stopped. When she was in a daze, she felt Ling Jing's hand on her face. Without thinking much, she habitually snuggled into Ling Jing's arms. He hugged her from behind and buried his face in her neck. When she got up in the morning, Ling Jing also got up. "Yesterday, the store manager said that we have to go early today." "Yes. I'll give you a lift." "Okay." Ling Jing nodded. "But don't come to me next time. Yesterday was my first day at work, and I'll be busy until late today." "Late?" Su Peijian frowned slightly. Yes, I'm an apprentice, so of course I have to leave early and come back late. Thank you. Su Peijian's waist was a little sore. She stepped forward and kissed Ling Jing on the cheek. Then study hard and strive to be your own boss in the future. Then you'll have more free time. Okay. Ling Jing nodded. Her expression was gentle, and there was nothing strange about her. Su Peijian followed him out. Ling Jing got out of the car and entered the bakery. After entering the door, they went directly to the back door, where Gu Xiu's car was already waiting. Gu Xiu looked at his young master and really didn't understand what he was doing. He said that he wanted to buy a bakery. Who would care about such a small workshop? Was the Ling family's business not enough for him to play around with? However, as a subordinate, he had no right to speak. He drove Ling Jing to the company. After entering the company, Ling Jing changed her jacket and put on a suit jacket. When he returned to his office, his subordinates were already waiting there. Gu Xiu entered the door. After Ling Jing finished listening to the reports from her subordinates, she stood in front of him. Gu Xiu waved his hand and those people left. The irrelevant people in the office had all left. Ling Jing glanced at Gu Xiu. What is it? Shen Lefyu has already made contact with the people we buried. Gu Xiu nodded. She should have believed us. I reckon she'll make her move in the next 2 days. After he finished speaking, he realized that Ling Jing looked absent-minded. Young master. After wiring for so long, why does Ling Jing not look happy at all? Isn't it just a matter of time? Anyway, it's just one of them. I'm not curious anymore. From the eldest to the 5th, none of them could escape. The ancient cultivator stood motionless. He only felt that Ling Jing was becoming more and more uncertain. After finishing the report, Gu Xiu turned around and was about to leave. However, Ling Jing suddenly stopped him. Gu Xiu turned around and saw Ling Jing staring at him strangely. Young master. Let me ask you something. What? I remember that you have a girlfriend, right? Yes. Gu Xiu didn't understand why Ling Jing asked this, but he still answered honestly, I have a girlfriend. We've been dating for 3 years. Ling Jing's expression became more and more strange. Have you ever lied to your girlfriend? No. Gu Xiu shook his head. I'm not courting death. Why would I lie to her? Ling Jing's face darkened. She glanced at Gu Xiu coldly. You can leave now. Gu Xiu was confused, but he had no choice but to leave. He thought for a long time but still couldn't understand. He only felt that the young master was really becoming more and more temperamental. What should he do? Su Peijian looked at the invitation in her hand and was a little lost in thought. The invitation was sent by Su Qingsang. The banquet of Tianyu Group. Why did she send me an invitation? Her phone rang at the right time. It was Su Qingsang. She frowned and hesitated for 3 seconds before picking up. Peijian, did you receive the invitation? Yes. I know that if Ji Miao gave you an invitation, you wouldn't come. However, this is the group's. It was supposed to be for Dad. Because Dad has some cooperation with some companies here. But Dad is in Lin City and can't come. He told me that some cases will be handed over to you and you will be in charge of them. Yes. Yes. Because the cooperation with Lin Feixing's company went well last time, Su Qinghui used the excuse that he had to be in Lin City often and handed over some cases that he thought were suitable to her. If that's the case, then you have to come. Meet those partners. Su Peijian didn't speak. Her expression didn't look good. Her fingertips held the invitation, and her expression was slightly cold. Peijian? Okay. I got it. I'll go. You can also bring a male partner. Su Qingsang reminded her very considerately. You can bring the gentleman from last time. No need. Ling Jing's personality was really not suitable for that kind of occasion. She had no intention of pushing Ling Jing into the upper class. It wasn't suitable for him. Okay. You can come by yourself when the time comes. After hanging up the phone, Su Peijian put down the invitation and looked at the words on it in a daze. Was she really going to interact with the Hua family and the Hua family's affairs again? What's wrong? When Ling Jing returned home, he found that Su Peijian didn't look good. He went forward and put the box in his hand on the coffee table, then sat down next to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Why do you look unhappy? I'm not unhappy. Su Peijian shook her head. There were some things that she didn't know how to tell Ling Jing. How are you? Are you used to working for a week? Of course I'm used to it. Ling Jing hugged her tightly and lowered his head to smell the fragrance on her body. It's just that every day, the store manager likes to let us bring home the bread that can't be sold. Su Peijian looked at the bread on the coffee table. Next time, you should bring the cake that you baked yourself. Okay. Ling Jing let go of her and turned his face to the side. But I've just learned. My skills are very poor. It's okay. Su Peijian smiled. As long as the bread you baked is delicious, I'll definitely do you the favor. Then wouldn't I be very honored? As Ling Jing spoke, his hands began to be dishonest again. Su Peijian didn't refuse him. Other than her menstrual period, their daily entanglement had become a necessity, just like eating and sleeping every day. He was very tall. He easily picked her up and went to the room. With Ling Jing around, the emotions she felt when the Tianyu group sent the invitation card to her dissipated under his actions. A few days later, it was the day of the banquet held by Tianyu group. Ling Jing didn't work the night shift this time. Their bakery had 2 shifts every day. One week was the night shift, and the other was the day shift. Ling Jing said that from this week onwards, they would work the day shift. Yesterday, he asked her to promise to come back to eat with him. Where are we going to eat tonight? Nowhere. Su Peijian put on her makeup and stood up. I have plans tonight. What plans? Ling Jing stepped forward and hugged her waist. Are you going to talk business with a male client? Although he had arranged for Ng Tianlong last time, he was really afraid that Su Peijian would meet such a person. Su Peijian didn't pay attention to the nervousness in Ling Jing's words. She knew what he was thinking. But in this world, not everyone would be like Ng Tianlong. There's a banquet at Tianyu Group. I'm going. Tianyu Group? Ling Jing was stunned. Why was Su Peijian going to Tianyu Group's banquet? Su Peijian then realized that Ling Jing might not have heard of a company like Tianyu Group. We have some business cooperation. Su Peijian didn't tell him about her relationship with Su Qingsang. She didn't know where to start or how to say it. She didn't say it, and Ling Jing wasn't curious. After all, he already knew what he wanted to know. Then you go. I'll help myself. Okay. Su Peijian was about to leave, but when she saw Ling Jing's face, she turned back again and kissed him on the cheek. Okay, I'm leaving. You can order takeout at home, or ask Xiao Xiao to come over and cook for you. Okay. Su Peijian left. Ling Jing packed up and was about to go to the company. His phone rang. The name displayed on it was an old woman. Ling Jing frowned and picked up the phone. Mom. It's rare that you still remember me as your mother. Lu Xian's voice came from the other side of the phone. How long have you not been home? It hasn't been that long. Didn't you just come back a few days ago? Yes, I just came back a few days ago, but after I came back, I left in a hurry after a meal. I didn't even stay at home for a night. What do you want me to say about you? Mom, didn't I say that I'm busy with work? Don't be cheeky with me. Busy? How busy? So busy that you didn't even go back to the Imperial Villa? You didn't even stay at the company? Tell me honestly, where are you? Where can I be? I'm at the company. What a coincidence. I'm at your company now. Lu Xian's words made Ling Jing hold his forehead. Mom, what do you want? There's a banquet tonight. Your father is not well and can't attend. Why don't you accompany me? Banquet? Ling Jing's forehead twitched. What banquet? Tianyu Group's banquet seems to be an anniversary celebration. It's very big. Many people from the business world will come. Even the mayor of Rome City will come. Ling Jing held his hand there without moving. He thought of what Su Peijian had said before. She seemed to be going to Tianyu Group's banquet tonight. Chapter 857. Are you listening to me? Ling Jing was still absent-minded when Lu Xian's voice sounded. This time, there was obvious dissatisfaction. Let me tell you, it's fine if you don't want to go home, but you have to accompany me to the banquet tonight. Mom, I really have something to do. I don't care what you're doing. I'll send the address and time to your phone later. You can show up on your own tonight. Did you hear me? After Lu Xian finished speaking, she hung up the phone without giving Ling Jing any time to react. Ling Jing looked at his phone and thought that Su Peijian would also go to the Tianyu Group's banquet tonight. Now, Lu Xian wanted him to go. What was this? Ling Jing threw his mobile phone aside in annoyance and his face was gloomy. Su Peijian had attended many banquets. Except for the last time when he tried to steal Su Qingsang's limelight, which ended in an unexpected failure. She almost never missed. Standing in the boutique, she came to pick up the dress she ordered a few days ago. The invitation arrived just in time, giving her a chance to make some alterations to the dress she had ordered. She is on the thin side. It was just that her bust was more impressive than the average woman's. In order to keep a low profile, she chose a black dress. The neckline design exposed both sides of the shoulders. The soft muslin began to shrink around her waist until it was too tight to hold. She turned around and looked at herself in the mirror. She was satisfied. At that moment, the stylist took out a pair of black high heels and placed them in front of her. He looked himself up and down. Not bad, I should be able to control the situation. By the time Su Peijian entered the banquet hall, many people had already arrived. Most of them were unfamiliar faces, and she didn't recognize many of them. She wasn't surprised to see the mayor of Rome City there. In the past 2 years, Tianyu Group had really become more and more powerful. Su Qingsang saw her from afar. She handed the baby to the nanny and walked towards her. Today, as the wife of the president of Tianyu Group, she looked noble and elegant in her blue dress. She had to admit that Su Qingsang's temperament was getting better and better after marrying Hua Jinyao. Peijian, you're here. Su Qingsang smiled warmly and said, there are many guests today. I'm afraid I can't entertain them all. However, there are a few friends I met after coming to Rome City. Can I introduce them to you? I have a companion too. There's no need for that. Su Peijian shook her head. You should get back to work. I can take care of myself. All right then. She knew Su Peijian's personality very well. There was no point in saying anything more. Su Qingsang said a few more words and left. Over the past 2 years, she had been in the industry for a long time, so she was more and more at ease. Su Peijian watched quietly for a while before finally withdrawing her gaze. She was just about to find a quiet place to sit down when she saw a noblewoman walking in from afar. That woman gave her the feeling that she was somewhat familiar. Su Peijian was still trying to recall where she had seen her before. That rich lady was greeting people, but for some reason, she was picking people to greet. Then, she walked to the side and picked a place to sit. Her seat happened to be behind a screen. Su Peijian was sitting behind him. The woman's face was indeed familiar, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember who she was. She seemed to see someone familiar in front of her, and then she heard the voice of the rich lady on the phone. Jing. Didn't I tell you to come over? Where are you? You're brave now. You don't take me seriously anymore. I asked you to pick you up, but you said you would come by yourself. Where are you now? What? Something came up and you can't come? What is it? I already told you this morning. Jing. Su Peijian's footsteps stopped there, then she shook her head. How could it be so coincidental? Must it be Ling Jing's Jing? Maybe it was some other word. Without thinking much, she turned and left. After she left, the rich lady's temper rose. Ling Jing, do you still respect me as your mother? Huh? Sister-in-law? Hello, sister-in-law. The sudden greeting made Su Peijian stop in her tracks. She looked at the person. It took her some time to remember who the person in front of her was. Wan Xiuzhe and Lin Nianji. Hui Yifan's friends. At that time, she and Hui Yifan used each other and hung out together. Because Hui Yifan's friends were younger than Hui Yifan, they were very happy to call her sister-in-law. It was a little ironic. Hui Yifan's status in the Hua family was not low. However, because the people from several big families in Rong City were all on good terms with Hua Jinyao. Wan Xianyang from the Wan family, Su Changlong from the Su family, Tang Mohan from the Tang family, and Qing Xianyun from the Qing family. After the heirs of these big families were decided, they naturally had fun with Hua Jinyao, the appointed heir of the Hua family. However, who didn't have some shameful things to say? This Wan Xiuzhe was the illegitimate son of the Wan family. And Lin Nianji was the illegitimate son of the Tang family. Wan Xiuzhe was fine. The Wan family at least gave him a surname and recognized his identity. Lin Nianji was still not recognized by the Tang family and still followed his biological mother's surname. These two and a few others didn't have good backgrounds. They couldn't rely on Hua Jinyao, so they all relied on Hui Yifan. Wan Xiuzhe and Lin Nianji had a good relationship with Hui Yifan back then. Su Peijian didn't intend to make things difficult for them, but her voice was very cold. Don't call me sister-in-law. I'm not your sister-in-law. Sister-in-law's words are too hurtful. Our brother Fan is thinking about you every day in prison. These words were very reasonable. In the past 2 years, Hui Yifan had been in prison more or less because of her. If she hadn't taken Qi Shiwei's plan, Hui Yifan wouldn't have been sentenced to so long. However, she said, I have nothing to do with him now. You don't have to call me sister-in-law. After saying this, she was about to leave. However, Wan Xiuzhe blocked in front of her. Sister-in-law, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Brother Fan is about to come out. He'll be released in a few days. Sister-in-law, do you want to come with us to pick him up? Hui Yifan was coming out. Didn't he serve a longer sentence than her? Su Peijian didn't ask back then, but she vaguely remembered that Hui Yifan's sentence was longer than hers. Was he coming out so soon? It seemed that old Master Hua was still too soft-hearted. Sister-in-law? Wan Xiuzhe wanted to say something, but Su Peijian didn't want to listen. I'll say it again, I'm not your sister-in-law. Secondly, Hui Yifan and I broke up a long time ago. So what happens to him has nothing to do with me. She didn't even use the word break up, because to her, there was no such thing as a so-called breakup between her and Hui Yifan. They had cooperated with each other, and after they finished using each other, they each received the punishment they deserved. Wan Xiuzhe and Lin Nianji looked at each other, as if they didn't expect Su Peijian to be so heartless. For Su Peijian, this was enough. Because meeting these two people had greatly affected her mood. Not long after, she sat in the corner and listened to the gossip for a while, looking at the various attitudes of the people who came to attend. She was already familiar with these people, so she wasn't unfamiliar with them at all. But now, she was inexplicably annoyed by what she had enjoyed in the past. Listening to those women talk about the beautiful jewelry of this store and the beautiful bags of that store, she lost interest for the first time. She went to say goodbye to Su Qingsang and left. As for the other members of the Hua family, she was no longer interested in seeing them. Before leaving, she saw from the corner of her eye that the rich lady from before was still on the phone. Occasionally, the whispers of two women who passed by just happened to pour into her ears. Did you see that? She gave up being the best actress and ran to be someone else's lover. Now she even openly appeared in front of the public. How shameless. I saw her. Shoo, don't mention it, don't let her hear it. What does it matter if she hears it? She dares to do it, so why should she be afraid of people talking about it? Su Peijian followed their gazes and glanced at the rich lady. It was only then that she remembered who that woman was. A long time ago, an actress who had won 2 Best Actress awards. Her surname seemed to be Liu. She remembered it because she and Li Qianxue both liked the movie that won the Best Actress award. Both of them had watched it. It wasn't until Su Peijian got into the car that she finally remembered the name of the Best Actress. Her name was Lu Xian. No wonder she looked familiar. Her every movement was indeed charming, but she didn't expect that she was actually being someone else's lover now. But what did that have to do with her? These stars, these people, didn't they come and go like this? Why should she be surprised? When Su Peijian returned home, she found that Ling Jing wasn't at home. She frowned slightly. If she remembered correctly, Ling Jing said that he wouldn't be working the night shift tonight and would come back early. Su Peijian took out her phone and called Ling Jing. The phone rang in the room. She went in and found that Ling Jing didn't bring his phone. Where did this guy go? Su Peijian thought about it and was about to change her clothes to find Ling Jing when Ling Jing came back. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the gown Su Peijian was wearing. Su Peijian had left in a hurry. It was a little cold outside, but she was too lazy to change. After thinking about it, she decided to go home first. When Ling Jing saw Su Peijian, he suddenly couldn't move his eyes away. The black gown really suited her. It made her look like her skin was creamy and outstanding. Where did you go? In the study. In the study? She had forgotten to go to the study just now. What are you doing in the study? Looking for some new cake recipes. Ling Jing's answer was a little absent-minded. Before Su Peijian asked again, he had already stepped forward and picked her up. You are so beautiful today. With his arms around her waist, Ling Jing's hand happened to touch Su Peijian's back after the first compliment. There was a hollow part there, revealing more than half of her waist. His expression suddenly changed. You didn't go to the party wearing this today, did you? What else? Ling Jing's teeth were a little sore. Looking at Su Peijian, he couldn't help but bite her collarbone. Next time, don't wear such revealing clothes. It was best to wear it at home. Ling Jing. Was there something wrong with his eyes? Which part of her clothes was revealing? But before she could finish her words, Ling Jing had already put her body on the bed. Chapter 858. Tianyu Group's banquet was like an interlude. Su Peijian forgot about it after attending. Her life entered a relatively peaceful state. Every day, after work, she took time to go back to see Xiang Kaiping and eat with her. However, she rarely returned to the villa. When Xiang Kaiping asked, she only said that it was inconvenient for her to go to work. In fact, she knew in her heart that Xiang Kaiping might have guessed that she had a boyfriend, but her personality had always been like that. If she didn't say it, Xiang Kaiping would never take the initiative to ask. Since she didn't ask, Su Peijian didn't intend to say it. First, the conditions were not ripe. Second, her relationship with Ling Jing hadn't reached that stage yet. Although it hadn't reached that stage yet, Su Peijian had seriously thought about her future with Ling Jing. Perhaps it was because Ling Jing was too sloppy now that she didn't have the confidence to bring him to Xiang Kaiping for the time being. What are you thinking about? Ling Jing got down from her and found that Su Peijian was distracted at such a time. He couldn't help but bite her on the neck. Su Peijian felt the pain and glanced at Ling Jing. She was really speechless about how he always liked to leave all kinds of marks on her body. Are you a dog? Do you always like to bite people? I'm a wolf. Ling Jing bit her again as he spoke, but this time, it was a little lighter than before. I only like to bite you. Su Peijian saw that he was about to approach her again and raised a hand to block his chest. Ling Jing, I have something to ask you. Ask. He pulled her hand away and wanted to kiss her again. Her body was really too irresistible. It wasn't the kind of girl who was young and inexperienced, nor was it like some women who were too open and dissolute. She was very honest and very passionate. She was honest about her own desires, gave him full feedback, and gave him enough passion. Their compatibility in bed was quite perfect, and her smooth skin and soft body made him often addicted, unable to extricate himself. If he was willing to be honest, it wouldn't be called somewhat, but very. Ling Jing. Su Peijian pushed him away and then looked into his eyes very seriously. How's your study going? What? As an apprentice. How's your study going? I think if you really want to do this, I think you can actually find a shop. It took time to find a store, renovate, and promote the store. Also, you might not have to do it yourself in the end. You can hire someone. Do you dislike me? Ling Jing looked at the entanglement on her face, almost without thinking about it. Ling Jing? You don't like me? You think I'm just a little acolyte? I didn't mean that. You do. You want me to open a shop now? Isn't that because you dislike me? Without waiting for Su Peijian to speak, he turned around, looking as if he didn't want to talk to her. That's not what I meant. Su Peijian knew that a person like Ling Jing, who seemed to be carefree and unrestrained, might be very sensitive. Realizing that he had misspoken, he said, That's not what I meant. What I mean is, we actually have a better option that can be faster. So be it. Why did he have to find excuses for himself? If I do as you say, won't I still be relying on you? Ling Jing refused to turn around. Su Peijian lost her patience. I just hope that you can take a detour. If you really think that way, there's nothing I can do. Ling Jing didn't speak, and the room was very silent. The good atmosphere just now was gone. Su Peijian lay down, and the atmosphere in front of her was a little oppressive. She thought about it and took a step back in the end. A man's pride. She turned around and patted Ling Jing on the shoulder. Okay, I didn't think it through. Let's not talk about it, okay? Su Peijian could understand Ling Jing's silence. He had always been a very proud person. Even when he used to be her gigolo, she had never seen him feel wronged. Naturally, he didn't want to be arranged by her like this. If you like being an acolyte, continue being an acolyte. When you think it's suitable, we'll talk about the future. How about it? Ling Jing turned around and looked at Su Peijian's sincere eyes. He actually felt a little guilty. Okay. I'll listen to you. But you have to promise me one thing. What? Promise me first. With Su Peijian's intelligence, if he made her promise now that she would forgive him no matter what he did or what he lied to her in the future, Su Peijian would definitely be able to guess that he was hiding something from her. Su Peijian looked at his childish face and frowned slightly. Okay. As long as it doesn't violate my principles, I can promise you anything. Violate principles? Ling Jing frowned. This shouldn't be considered a violation of principles, right? Yes. Everyone had their own bottom line and principles. Her bottom line and principles weren't used to be violated by Ling Jing. Ling Jing didn't respond. He suddenly felt a little nervous. She didn't know what he thought of, but he suddenly turned over and pressed Su Peijian under his body. He lowered his head and gave her a domineering kiss. The Ling Jing in front of her seemed to have returned to the beginning, full of wildness, predatory, and full of evil aura. Su Peijian didn't know if she had provoked him just now, but she saw that even though he was anxious, his actions were still a little gentle. She swallowed all her words. Forget it, life was still long. Let him slowly understand and slowly change. She was in no hurry. Su Peijian handed the document in her hand to Zhou Mei. Recently, because of her series of measures, the performance of the 2 department stores was satisfactory. It was almost Labor Day. There was a small holiday. She was thinking about whether to arrange for the company's employees to go somewhere for a few days. It could be considered as a reward for their hard work. As soon as this suggestion was put forward, Zhou Mei and a few others immediately agreed. Then let the administrative department arrange it. Don't arrange all of them on Labor Day. There are many people who come to shop during the holidays. We'll leave people on duty. Let a group go first, and when they don't come, we'll change to another group. Okay. The manager of the administrative department left happily. Su Peijian knew that although it wasn't a big company, the welfare system had to be kept up. The administrative department acted quickly and sent the plan up in less than 2 days. Su Peijian looked at it and thought it was good. It was chosen in a nearby city. The scenery there was good, and it was said that one could enjoy cherry blossoms in this season. Let's do it here. You decide. President Su, are you coming with us? Su Peijian thought about it. She wanted to, but there was still Ling Jing. He was an apprentice now, so he probably didn't have many holidays. Maybe she should ask him later. I won't go. You guys make the arrangements. The manager left. Soon, there was a knock on the office door. She thought that the other party had something else to say, but after asking him to come in, it was Zhou Mei who came in. Zhou Mei stood at the door, and behind her stood a strange acquaintance. President Su, he insisted on coming up to see you. Su Peijian sighed silently. You can leave now. Help me make a cup of coffee. Yes. Zhou Mei glanced at the man. In terms of aura, he was not as imposing as Lin Feixing. However, she didn't know what happened to that President Lin. He hadn't been coming recently. Could it be that President Su changed to this one? Hui Yifan entered the door and looked around. He clicked his tongue. It seems that you've been doing well. Su Peijian didn't reply. She glanced at Hui Yifan. His ostentatious aura was gone. If he used to have the demeanor of a rich young master, now, apart from his outstanding face, the aura he exuded was completely different. It seemed that more than 2 years in prison had smoothed out his edges. You look like you've changed a lot. Hearing her words, Hui Yifan walked to the desk and glared at Su Peijian with hatred. I've changed a lot. Who gave me this? If it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for you, would I have fallen for that trap? Would I have become like this? Hui Yifan. Su Peijian sat in her leather chair and didn't move at all. She looked at Hui Yifan with a cold smile and a hint of disapproval in her eyes. I said something wrong just now. 2 years have passed, but you haven't changed at all. What do you mean? How could he not have changed? After coming out of prison, there was no place for him in the company. There was nothing for him to do at home. Hua Mingliang said that he would give him a small company to run. However, he wasn't interested at all. He had always thought highly of himself and felt that there was nothing he couldn't do against Hua Jinyao. Now, he lost to him completely. He looked at Hua Jinyao in high spirits. Then what? He became a street rat. How could Hui Yifan accept such a difference? I mean, you haven't changed your mind after being locked up in prison for more than 2 years? Su Peijian stood up and looked at Hui Yifan coldly. I've been locked up for 2 years. I was wrong. I admit my mistake, and I've paid the price. But what about you? You're still the same as 2 years ago. You're used to pushing things to others. Hui Yifan, haven't you ever thought that you have your own reasons? Hui Yifan's expression changed. He looked at Su Peijian with anger. What about me? If it weren't for the old man's favoritism, how did I become like this? How did I lose to Hua Jinyao? Tell me. Playing the lute to a cow. Su Peijian couldn't get through to him, so she didn't intend to continue. You can leave. I have nothing to say to you. Leave? Hui Yifan looked at Su Peijian's face and sneered. I can't leave now. After all, I came here to look for you. Look for me? Su Peijian smiled, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Hui Yifan, I've done everything I could to help you 3 years ago. I've done everything I could to help you. It's your own business that you lost to Hu Jinyao because you're not as good as him. Why am I the one to be blamed for this? Don't you think you're being unreasonable? Blaming you? Hui Yifan reached out and lifted Su Peijian's chin. She swatted it away. He wasn't angry, but his eyes became darker. Of course I can't blame you. After all, I still have to count on you. Chapter 859. Hui Yifan looked at Su Peijian's beautiful face. The better she was, the worse he felt. Both of them had made mistakes. Why was he the only one who had nothing in the end? What do you mean? You were the one who caused me to become like this. Su Peijian, I'm in trouble because of you. Since you made me suffer, of course, you have to take responsibility for me. Take responsibility for you? It was the first time Su Peijian had heard such an argument. Don't you think your words are ridiculous? How is it ridiculous? I think it's a good idea. Hui Yifan was almost a rascal at this time. You've made a lot of big moves recently. What? You're rich now, and you're throwing your old lover aside? Old lover? Isn't it? Hui Yifan didn't think he was wrong. I haven't forgotten how much happiness we had in the past. Su Peijian looked at Hui Yifan and sneered. Hui Yifan, no wonder you lost to Hu Jinyao. What do you mean? Hui Yifan. Are you still so naive at this time? Do you think we were lovers back then? Su Peijian's expression was a bit disdainful. It was just a short-term cooperation for mutual benefit. Do you really think I have feelings for you and like you? You're looking down on me too much. Hui Yifan's expression changed. He looked at Su Peijian with a somewhat ferocious expression. Su Peijian, how dare you say that? There's nothing I can't say. Su Peijian knew what Hui Yifan was thinking and also knew that this man was not a good person. However, whether it was 3 years ago or 3 years later, he was no match for Hu Jinyao. Looking at this magnanimity, he was far from being able to do so. Hui Yifan, I'm sincerely advising you. If you still want to live a good life in the future, put away all those thoughts in your heart. Old Master Hua is a kind person and still has a kind heart for the younger generation. If you cherish what you have now, there may be a bright future in the future. However, if you insist on doing things your own way, then I can only congratulate you in advance and continue to go back to the prison. You. Hui Yifan couldn't help but want to grab Su Peijian's hand, but she avoided him. For the sake of our acquaintance, I'm just advising you with kind words. Listen or not, it's up to you. As for your thoughts, don't even think about it. Because I will never agree to it. Are you really going to be so heartless? Heartless? You can think of it that way. Su Peijian had nothing else to say to Hui Yifan. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Please. All right. Very good. Hui Yifan nodded and glared at Su Peijian fiercely. Since you're heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. Su Peijian, we'll see. We'll see. Su Peijian was never one to be threatened. Hui Yifan turned around and left. Su Peijian sat back down in her office chair. It was already early summer, but she still felt a bit chilly. Su Peijian rubbed the space between her eyebrows tiredly. Her mood was heavy. Hui Yifan was quite capable, but he had a very small heart. The main reason why he couldn't take over the Tianyu group was that he didn't have a broad vision. Su Peijian had noticed his problem a long time ago. At that time, she thought that although he wasn't a good person, at least he had some ability. She didn't expect that after 2 years in prison, Hui Yifan's personality would change completely. With his current ability, it was absolutely impossible for him to shake Hui Jinyao's position. However, Hui Yifan was very likely to play some dirty tricks. If he couldn't touch Hui Jinyao, he was very likely to deal with her. Su Peijian put down her hand. Forget it. She would deal with whatever came her way. If Hui Yifan was tactful, then so be it. If he wasn't, then she wasn't afraid of him. In the next few days, Su Peijian was a little nervous. She wasn't sure how Hui Yifan would do these things with his personality. But no matter what, she was prepared. Things at the company and at home. Xiang Kaiping wasn't old, but she really didn't have much courage now. She didn't want Xiang Kaiping to worry. After waiting for a few days, there was no movement from Hui Yifan. Su Peijian didn't let her guard down. With Hui Yifan's personality, she was afraid that he wouldn't give up easily. She wasn't afraid herself, but if Hui Yifan wanted to deal with her family, it would be a bit of a headache. Thinking of the company's employees going on a trip on Labor Day, Su Peijian signed up for a luxurious tour for the elderly without much hesitation. A luxurious 1-month tour of 10 countries in Europe, with professional tour guides and professional team doctors. There was also a professional interpreter to accompany them the whole time. After Su Peijian introduced the tour to Xiang Kaiping was quite satisfied and didn't refuse. After Su Peijian made the arrangements, she got on the plane to travel. Ling Jing put down the bowl in her hand and looked at Su Peijian in front of her. What's wrong? I saw you spacing out a few times. Su Peijian came back to her senses and found that the bowl was empty. She put down the bowl and her eyes fell on Ling Jing. She didn't know if it was her illusion, but she always felt that since Ling Jing started working, her sloppy temperament seemed to have faded a lot. Why are you staring at me like that? Nothing. Su Peijian shook her head. Something happened at the company. Is the problem serious? It's okay. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing. Xiang Kaiping had been away for 3 days. This week, everything had been calm. It seemed that Hui Yifan was just saying tough words. He still had scruples. At least, he probably wouldn't want to go in again. I see that you've been spacing out recently. What's wrong? Is the problem serious? No. I can solve it. She didn't care about Hui Yifan. Ling Jing's eyes were full of curiosity as he stared at Su Peijian. Why did he always feel that there was something wrong with Su Peijian recently? Su Peijian felt a little headache when she met Ling Jing's eyes. This person was never afraid of trouble. Even looking at him, he seemed to be a person who couldn't wait to cause trouble. After thinking about it again and again, Su Peijian decided not to tell Ling Jing about it for the time being. First, he was impulsive, and she was afraid that he would cause trouble. Second, Hui Yifan was a person who, since he wanted to benefit from her, would probably talk about the conditions first. Xiang Kaiping was old and couldn't afford to be tossed around. As for Ling Jing, if the other party really wanted to cause trouble for her, then she would talk to him about the conditions. That was what Hui Yifan wanted. If she really couldn't handle it, she would ask old Master Hua to step in. No matter what, he was a member of the Hua family. She believed that old Master Hua wouldn't watch his grandson go astray again and do nothing. Is it really that easy to solve? Ling Jing stepped forward, put his arm around her waist, and stroked between her eyebrows with one hand. Your eyebrows can squeeze a mosquito to death. Su Peijian turned to look at him and suddenly smiled. It's really not difficult to solve. If it's difficult to solve, how are you going to help me? Of course Ling Jing was halfway through his words when he suddenly remembered his identity at this time. He got up, stood behind Su Peijian, and put his hands on her shoulders. Of course I can't help you solve it, but I can give you a massage and let you relax. I thank you. How are you going to thank me? How do you want to thank me? What do you think? Su Peijian's thoughts were attracted by Ling Jing's words. Soon, she stopped thinking about it. However, she didn't want to think about it, but Hui Yifan seemed to have begun to take action. After a few days, she received a call from Hui Yifan. What? Do you think I can't do anything to you just because you sent your mother away? Hui Yifan. Su Peijian just didn't want Xiang Kaiping to get involved in these things and worry about them. But it didn't mean that she was really afraid of him. It seems that you are really not afraid of entering the palace again. Entering the palace again? No, no, no. You think too highly of me. Since I'm out, I naturally don't plan to go back in. Then what do you want? I don't want anything. Don't you know my conditions very well? Impossible. Su Qinghui's current projects were all entrusted to her by her father. How could she give the benefits in her hands to Hui Yifan just like that? All right. Since you are so determined. Then, should I give some gifts to your little boyfriend? Hui Yifan. Stop calling him that. I didn't expect that. Your taste is so bad now. How can you like that little punk? Hui Yifan, this is my business. It's none of your business. TSK. That little boyfriend of yours. Not only is he a little punk, but he is also a sugar daddy. Hui Yifan. All right. Since we can't come to an agreement, I won't force you. But since the gift has been given, there is no reason for me to take it back. Don't you think so? What on earth do you want? Before Su Peijian could ask, Hui Yifan had already hung up. She clenched her cell phone tightly, and her expression became very ugly at that moment. She grabbed her cell phone and car keys and walked out without thinking. When she saw Zhou Mei, she told her to cancel all her future plans. Su Peijian got into the car and drove very fast. Very fast. She didn't know what Hui Yifan had done. She only knew that if Hui Yifan really touched Ling Jing, she would do everything in her power to send Hui Yifan to prison again. She meant what she said. Su Peijian started to call Ling Jing after she got out of the house, but no one answered. She became more and more worried. She resisted the urge to call the police because she was afraid that Hui Yifan would hurt Ling Jing. The car stopped in front of the bakery, and she rushed in without thinking. Where is Ling Jing? Ling Jing's class seemed to change every week. She was so nervous that she forgot what class he was working that day and came straight over. Ling Jing? The shop assistant was shocked by her and couldn't help but look inside. Manager, someone is looking for Ling Jing. The man's voice was trembling. Soon, a middle-aged man came out. When he saw Su Peijian, he was stunned and then shook his head. Ling Jing is off today. He said he is busy. He is not here. Thank you. Chapter 860. Lu Xiyun sat on the sofa in Rome Garden. She looked at Ling Jing with obvious dissatisfaction in her eyes. When are you going to stop being willful? What is this place? Is it somewhere you can live? Mom. I can't live here. If Lu Xiyun saw the one-bedroom apartment she bought before, would she say it was a dog kennel? Don't call me Mom. Lu Xiyun was furious. Do you still care about me? I asked you to accompany me to the banquet, but you ignored me. I asked you to go home and have a meal with me, but you refused. All right, it was your dad's birthday yesterday, but you only showed your face during the day. You just left. Ling Jing, are we too lenient with you? You're getting more and more out of control. So what if I go back? Ling Jing said disapprovingly. The old man has a lot of people around him. From the eldest to the fifth, which one of them isn't attentive to him? He doesn't lack people like me. You, all right. Mom, don't be angry. Anger will make you old. I said, don't call me Mom. Lu Xiyun was furious. Fine, fine, fine. I won't call you Mom. I'll call you sister, okay? Ling Jing smiled cheekily. Ordinary people couldn't stand it. But Lu Xiyun wasn't an ordinary person. Don't joke with me. Tell me honestly, how long do you want to live here? Do you want to go back or not? Do you know who you are? Until when? Ling Jing thought for a moment. Until I marry a wife for you. Marry me? Lu Xiyun looked at Ling Jing with a fake smile. The anger in her eyes deepened. Marry a wife? Or are you playing with me? How come I didn't know that my son would become a gigolo one day? Why don't you tell me? My, Lu Xiyun's, son is actually a gigolo? You're making me proud, aren't you? What's wrong with being a gigolo? Ling Jing thought about how Lu Xiyun took good care of herself. In the past, when people asked, she would deliberately say that she was her brother. Weren't you the first to treat me as a gigolo? Ling Jing smiled and hugged Lu Xiyun's waist. Sister Lu. If you hadn't treated me like a gigolo and raised me since I was young, would I have gone to find another woman to raise me? So it's my fault then? Lu Xiyun laughed angrily. She used to introduce Ling Jing like that because of the special situation of the Ling family at that time, but this guy, after so many years, still remembered this matter. Of course it's your fault. Ling Jing leaned over and kissed Lu Xiyun on the face. Sister Lu, when will you raise me again? I promise, I will get rid of all the women outside. What do you think? You make it sound nice. Okay, I will raise you again. You can dump this one in front of you first. Lu Xiyun said half-truthfully. He was having fun and was immersed in his role. But because she knew that Lu Xiyun used to be a movie queen, she was addicted to acting. Now that she was addicted to acting, as her son, he could only play along. Let's do it. I'll dump him later, okay? You're bluffing me again. Don't think that she didn't know that this woman this time was completely different from the previous women. I promise I won't bluff. Who can compete with Sister Lu in my heart? Ling Jing smiled and coaxed Lu Xiyun, trying to coax her away. However, at this moment, from the corner of his eye, he saw Su Peijian standing at the door, and he suddenly froze. She was still holding her phone in one hand and the car keys in the other. There were some thin beads of sweat on her forehead. It could be seen that she had rushed all the way here, and she had walked very fast. The smile on Ling Jing's face froze, and one of his hands was still on Lu Xiyun's shoulder. At this moment, he suddenly retracted it. You. Why did you come back? The anxiety on Su Peijian's face faded. After confirming that Ling Jing was fine, she looked at him expressionlessly, and the car key in her palm was tightly gripped by her. She clenched her jaw tightly. She used the slight pain of the edge of the key into her palm to prevent herself from losing her composure. She was looking at Ling Jing, and Ling Jing was also looking at her. She saw a flash of panic in his eyes. Panic? Huh, how ridiculous. The Ling Jing she knew had never looked panicked. She remembered that she had been rushing all the way here and kept calling Ling Jing. And now she saw that Ling Jing's phone was on the coffee table, but he deliberately didn't answer it. She remembered that when she came, she kept calling Hui Yifan. But Hui Yifan just didn't answer. She became more and more afraid. She had once been lost on a fork in her life. She was afraid that she would get lost a second time. She was also afraid that she would not be able to protect the people she cared about. But now? What did she see? She took a deep breath and told herself not to lose her mind when she was impulsive. She told herself that she was not a 17 or 18-year-old girl. She was willing to give Ling Jing a chance and listen to his explanation. The key sank deeper into her palm, and the tingling pain made her withdraw her hand slightly. She glanced at Lu Xiyun, who was next to Ling Jing. What? Aren't you going to introduce us? Ling Jing wanted to stand up, but at this time, Lu Xiyun grabbed his arm tightly and didn't let him stand up. He looked at Lu Xiyun and signaled her to let go of him with his eyes. Lu Xiyun didn't wait for him to get up and stood up first. She looked Su Peijian up and down. After 2 rounds, she retracted her gaze and looked at Ling Jing. Are you with her now? For the first time in his life, Ling Jing didn't know what to say or what to say. He looked at Su Peijian. Su Peijian had completely entered the door and put down the key and phone. She closed the door and stood in front of the two of them. Looking at Lu Xiyun, who was standing in front of Ling Jing, her eyes turned cold bit by bit. Lu Xiyun looked at Su Peijian in front of her with interest. The corners of her eyes raised. In fact, her eyes were very similar to Ling Jing's. They were both phoenix eyes. However, her eyes were bigger and higher, giving people a more gorgeous feeling. You are Su Peijian, right? I know you. Lu Xiyun's voice was indifferent. Ling Jing is with you now, right? Yes. Ling Jing is with me now. Su Peijian's voice was unusually calm. Do you know who Ling Jing is? Are you with him? Lu Xiyun raised her eyebrows. When she didn't smile, she gave off a sharp feeling. Su Peijian's lips were pursed into a straight line. She had always felt that after nearly 2 years in prison, nothing could cause her to have too much emotional fluctuations. However, from the moment she entered the door, from the moment she heard what Ling Jing said, she felt as if her heart was being gently clenched by a hand. The hand didn't exert much force, but she began to feel pain. Now, Lu Xiyun's words made her feel that the hand was tightening. She began to feel a little out of breath. Who is he? A gigolo? A hooligan? She paid for him, and he was outstanding. She kept him, and he was kept by her. Wasn't it? Look, you don't even know who he is, and you're with him. Don't you think you're ridiculous? Su Peijian's back was straight. Her pride wouldn't allow her to admit defeat at this time. She couldn't help but look at Ling Jing. What Lu Xiyun said wasn't important. What was important was Ling Jing. It didn't matter if he was a hooligan or a gigolo. Now, in front of her, he was her boyfriend. She had told him that they had a new start. She thought that she and Ling Jing were in an equal relationship. Ever since she brought Ling Jing back to her side, she had been embracing Ling Jing with an extremely tolerant heart. This tolerance was because she treated Ling Jing as her partner. Nothing else. Who are you? She stared at Ling Jing, waiting for him to give her an answer. No matter what the answer was, she wanted to hear him say it clearly. Ling Jing had never thought that he would encounter such a situation one day. He still remembered that he had asked Su Peijian for a promise. At that time, he had hoped that she would give him a chance no matter what he had done. But now, looking at Su Peijian's overly calm face, he couldn't say the promise he had asked her for back then. Who are you? Su Peijian's voice became colder. She stared at Ling Jing's face. At this moment, she seemed to have become the way she was when they first met. Cold, alienated, and emitted a cold temperament. Why are you being so aggressive? Lu Xiyun looked at Su Peijian and felt a little sorry for her. However, although she felt sorry for her, she felt even more sorry for her son. If you want to know the answer, you can't get it by being so aggressive. She turned around and looked at Ling Jing with a playful expression. Jing, tell her. Who are you? Ling Jing couldn't say it. After he got together with Su Peijian, it wasn't that he hadn't thought about what would happen if his identity was exposed one day. But that was definitely not the situation in front of him. Or perhaps, he had never thought about it, because he didn't dare to think about it. He was really afraid of thinking about it. He had almost understood Su Peijian's personality very well after spending a few months together. She was decisive, resolute, and couldn't be bothered with anything. Jing, why don't you say it? Lu Xiyun clicked her tongue in her heart. She felt that this trip was really worth it. Speaking of which, after Ling Jing grew up, his personality became more and more unpredictable. Sometimes, he deliberately pretended to be crazy in front of her and acted like a fool. However, this was the first time she had seen Ling Jing panic like this. After raising her son for so many years, this was the first time she had seen her son show such an expression. Unfortunately, this wasn't the right time. Otherwise, she really wanted to take a picture of it with her camera. Why don't I say it for you? Lu Xian was watching the show and didn't mind making things bigger. However, for Ling Jing, he couldn't wait for her to leave now. Shut up. After he shouted this sentence, he realized what he had done. He actually shouted at Lu Xian? For a moment, his face was a little gloomy. He glanced at Lu Xian, warning her with a hint of pleading. Chapter 861. Are you chasing me away? Lu Xian was a movie queen. She was addicted to acting and didn't want to leave. Tisk, you're chasing me away. I'm really hurt. Stop it. Ling Jing didn't even call her mother. Lu Xian felt pity for him. She raised her hand and patted his face. All right. Since you want to solve it yourself, I'll leave first. I believe you can handle it. But don't let me wait too long. Since her son was rarely so attentive and fell in love with a girl. Then settle it as soon as possible and bring her home. She was waiting to drink her wife's tea. To Su Peijian, the last sentence had two meanings. Her face became colder and colder. Lu Xian was done playing. She knew that if she continued, her son would lose face. She smiled and turned to leave. When she passed by Su Peijian, she glanced at her again. Yes, her figure was not bad. She had meat where she should be, and she was thin where she should be. Looking at a certain place, such a figure was very easy to take care of. When her son settled with his wife, she might be able to hold a grandson in 2 years. Thinking of the tender little ball, the smile on Lu Xian's face deepened. She turned around and smiled at Ling Jing before leaving. However, that smile, in Su Peijian's eyes, was a provocation. It was a warning. The hand that was clutching her heart began to exert force again. She was in more pain than before. She stood there expressionlessly, watching Lu Xian make all kinds of hints to Ling Jing in front of her, watching her provoke her. Watching her show the posture of a winner in front of her. She suddenly felt ridiculous. Very ridiculous. Lu Xian left. The living room quieted down. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing and took a step forward. Who is she? And who are you? She felt that the big hand was gripping her heart a little tighter. She took a step forward and looked at Ling Jing coldly. Tell me. Who is she and who are you? Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian and his lips moved. He wanted to speak, but he didn't know where to start. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know how to explain. It was a fact that he harbored ill intentions and took the opportunity to get close to her. It was also a fact that he wanted to make Su Peijian fall in love with him and then dump her. In the face of so many facts, all explanations were useless. Given Su Peijian's personality, how could she forgive him? Panic surged in his heart, and he realized that he was one step faster than he thought. She is my mother. There was a moment of silence in the air. Su Peijian thought about what she had heard when she entered the room and thought about Ling Jing's reaction just now. She suddenly smiled. What did you say? You said she's your mother? Yes. Su Peijian blinked as she recalled what she had heard at the reception. She burst out laughing. I really didn't know you had such a hobby. Do you like to call your sugar mommy? What nonsense are you talking about? Ling Jing was irritated by Su Peijian's sharp words. Although Lu Xian liked to play around sometimes, she was also a drama queen. But she was his mother. His face darkened. Su Peijian was not afraid at all. She raised her head and looked straight into Ling Jing's eyes. Isn't it a special hobby? Tell me, why don't you call me sister? Ling Jing's face darkened. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He knew that Su Peijian was very angry now, and he didn't want to quarrel with her. His eyes wandered around. The screen of his phone, which had been muted and thrown on the coffee table, lit up again. Ling Jing, I'm talking nonsense. Why don't you stop talking nonsense for me to see? Su Peijian's words rang in his ears. He didn't want to explain, so he picked up the phone and didn't wait for him to unlock it. A photo had already popped up on the screen. Looking at the photo, Ling Jing's face changed again. He swiped the screen. Not only that photo, but photos after photos appeared on his phone. Strange numbers kept sending photos, and all the main characters in the photos were only one, Su Peijian. Ling Jing stared at those photos, and his phone gradually tightened. His face gradually turned from black to green, and his gums clenched. One photo after another, until he reached the last one. After every pose of the person in the photo was imprinted in his mind, the storm in his eyes became more and more obvious. Ling Jing, who are you? Who is she? Su Peijian's voice made him raise his head, and he stared at her face. It was a very beautiful face, delicate, cold, arrogant, with personality, and ostentatious. He suddenly raised his hand, and the phone flew out of his palm, hit the wall, and then fell straight to the ground. The force was so great, and the impact was so fierce that the phone fell to the ground and directly broke into pieces. Su Peijian was startled by his sudden action, and the hand that was holding her heart tightly seemed to loosen at this moment. She swallowed her saliva, leaned back a little, and looked at Ling Jing. Ling Jing's face was very ugly. His face was blue, and his fists were clenched tightly. He walked around the coffee table and walked in front of Su Peijian. His tall figure stood in front of her, forming an excellent sense of oppression. Looking at Su Peijian's somewhat frightened face, he told himself that it was okay. This was his plan from the beginning, this was his original plan. Screw his acting, screw his disguise, screw his pretty boy. Everything, until today. At this moment, it would all be over. He stared at Su Peijian's face, and there was a beast in his heart that could no longer be suppressed at this moment. That beast was clamoring to come out. That beast was constantly roaring and roaring. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expression was gloomy. Even Su Peijian was taken aback by Ling Jing's reaction. Aren't you curious about who I am? Aren't you curious about who the woman just now is? I'll tell you. Ling Jing. The Ling Jing in front of her was very strange. Su Peijian wanted to retreat, but her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground. She couldn't move at all. My name is Ling Jing. That's my real name. However, I'm not a pretty boy. And I'm not that woman's pretty boy. She's my mother, my biological mother. The kind that's related by blood. Su Peijian didn't know what to say. Not only could she not move her feet, but she couldn't even make a sound. Right. I've probably never heard of someone like you. However, that sister of yours is still sister, or brother-in-law is still brother-in-law, so he should know who I am. I'm Ling Jing, the young master of the Ling family. You probably don't know what the Ling family does. The entire entertainment industry in Rome City, and even the entire province, belongs to our family. In addition, my old man has a few overseas routes. As for other industries, I can't explain them clearly. There are too many. If you're really interested in knowing more, I can ask my assistant to give you a list. He took a step forward, and Su Peijian took a step back. However, because of her weak legs, she almost fell. Ling Jing clasped her waist, pinched her chin with one hand, and stared at her face coldly. Do you understand? My identity is the young master of the Ling family. Su Peijian couldn't react. At this time, her consciousness was already empty, and she couldn't react at all. The word you was very soft, almost as if it was swallowed in her throat. There were many questions she wanted to ask, many things she wanted to say, but in the end, those words only turned into 3 words. Why? Why? Ling Jing nodded. This was really a good question. You still have the nerve to ask why? Raising his hand to pinch her chin, Ling Jing's eyes were sinister and ruthless. If his subordinates were here, they would know that this was the true face of young Master Ling. He was temperamental, unpredictable, and unpredictable. He was the young master of the Ling family that no one dared to provoke. He was like a demon. Su Peijian. Think about what you've done. Ask me why again. Su Peijian didn't understand. Something seemed to be out of control in front of her. There was clearly anxiety and nervousness in Ling Jing's eyes before, but now there was only anger. Anger? What right did he have to be angry? The person who should be angry should be her, right? He lied to her, and it was a lie from the beginning to the end. What right did he have to be angry now? Her expression was confused and a little frightened. That expression greatly pleased Ling Jing. He felt that the beast in his heart had finally been released at this time. He pinched her chin tightly and forcefully. If you forget what you've done, I don't mind reminding you. I'm the dignified young Master Ling, and you're treating me as a sugar baby? You're really capable. Su Peijian's face was pale. Her legs were weak. If it weren't for Ling Jing's hand on the back of her waist, she believed that she would have fallen to the ground. Ling Jing thought about the photos he had seen just now. He thought about Su Peijian being happy under another man. His voice became colder and colder. You don't count as a sugar baby. You can dump me whenever you want? Are you kidding me? Su Peijian gritted her teeth tightly. Looking at Ling Jing, who was completely different from usual, she didn't know how to react. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can fool around with me, young Master Ling? He leaned close to her ear and said with endless malice, word by word, you're just a convict. You're not even fit to carry my shoes. The words, convict, coming from someone else's mouth wouldn't have any effect on Su Peijian. But now, this sentence came from Ling Jing's mouth. She lost her usual calmness and rationality. Her strong heart didn't work at this time. Ling Jing let go of her hand. She, who couldn't stand steadily, staggered and fell to the ground just like that. Ling Jing looked down at her from above, his eyes gloomy and cold. Su Peijian, let me tell you, I've always been the one to fool around with others. No one can fool around with me. You called the start of this game, but the right to end it is in my hands. Lowering his head, he reached out to lift her chin and forced her to look at him. Now, I declare. Game over. After saying this, he looked at Su Peijian, who was still in a daze. At this moment, where was her usual noble and elegant demeanor? Her face was pale, and her body was shaking like a fallen leaf in the wind. Ling Jing's heart didn't calm down because he released the beast. Instead, he became even more annoyed. Chapter 862. The man's footsteps faded into the distance, accompanied by the sound of the door slamming. The living room quieted down. Su Peijian sat there. His body, which had been startled by the news, finally reacted at this moment. The hand that held her heart finally turned into a sharp knife and pierced into her heart. A sharp pain spread from the place where her heart was pierced, flowing along her blood to her limbs and bones. Her body fell to the ground, and her entire body was in pain. She trembled in pain. In the intense pain, Ling Jing's words were like echoes, ringing in her ears over and over again. I, the dignified young Master Ling, am being kept by you as a gigolo? You're really capable. Keeping me doesn't count. You can dump me whenever you want? Are you playing with me? Who do you think you are? Do you think you can play with me, young Master Ling? You're just a convict. You're not even fit to carry my shoes. Su Peijian, let me tell you, I've always been the one playing with people. No one can play with me. You called the start of this game, but the right to end it is in my hands. Now, I declare. Game over. Ah, she knew that she had an unbearable past. She knew that she had experienced the darkest time of her life. She used to think that she was prepared. Even if thousands of people criticized her, she would not retreat. However, when Ling Jing spat out the words, "convict," she seemed to be unable to stop herself from bleeding. That man was the person she loved now. Yes. She fell in love with Ling Jing. She didn't know when it started, but Ling Jing became more and more important in her heart. She broke her principles again and again for him. She gave in again and again for him. She even thought about the future for him. She clearly knew that their identities were so incompatible. She clearly knew what would happen if she brought Ling Jing to Xiang Kaiping. But she still chose to do so. Abandoning a possible, the best option. She fell in love with an uncertain factor like Ling Jing. And now? She suffered a backlash. The great pain swept over her like a monstrous wave. For the first time, she lost her vitality. She was like a boat swaying in the wind, being ruthlessly beaten by the waves, and finally dismembered. She laid on the ground powerlessly, feeling the uncontrollable pain once again spreading from her body to her heart, feeling the pain of her bleeding heart. The strong will he had been putting up for so long had completely collapsed at this moment. The intense pain made her a little confused, and she touched her phone in a daze. She didn't know if it was subconscious or something else, but she pressed the number that she knew by heart. She didn't care if the call was connected or not. Unable to hold the phone in his hand, he dropped it on the ground. She raised her hand to cover the position of her heart and kept whispering. "It hurts. It hurts. It hurts so much. It was really painful. I'm about to die from the pain. Why is it so painful? My whole body hurts, ah. Really, it's so painful. It hurts too much. Mom, it hurts." Su Peijian was half asleep when she heard someone knocking on the door. Her entire body was in pain. Not only did it hurt, but her body also felt weak. She didn't want to pay attention to the knocking at the door at all. However, the person seemed to be very persistent and kept knocking on the door. She forced herself to get up from the ground and dragged her head, which was as heavy as a rock, to open the door. The moment the door opened, she couldn't hold on anymore and directly fell down again. "Peijian?" In a voice full of worry, she was hugged into a warm chest, and she heard a voice that she was already very familiar with. "Peijian? Peijian, are you okay? Peijian?" That familiar voice and care made her whole body relax. So tired. So sleepy. He would be fine after a good sleep. Sleep. Relaxing herself, she allowed the darkness to envelop her consciousness. Su Peijian was awakened by a very soft conversation. She was very familiar with that voice. "Didn't you say that you would come to see her when you were free? Is that how you see her?" "How would I know?" "How would you know? You don't know anything. What kind of father are you? You don't know that your daughter is in a relationship, and you don't know that your daughter broke up? You don't even know that your daughter is sad because of her injury. I what? What? You've been acting for decades, and now you don't want to act anymore? Qinshua, what do you mean by that? What do you mean I've been acting for decades? Isn't it? Don't think that I'll forgive you for what you did in the past just because you treat Qing Sang well now. If you can't be consistent, why did you care so much about her in the past? I've been busy recently and didn't have time to take care of her." "Busy? Don't make excuses for yourself. You just don't care about it." Okay, it's all my fault. Don't be angry. You flew all the way here and didn't sleep for the whole night. Aren't you tired? Rest for a while. I'll go buy you something to eat." "What else to eat? I'm so angry that I'm full." "If you're really that angry, just hit me twice." "Hit you? I don't want my hands to be tired." The argument was very weak. Su Peijian listened to the two voices in a daze. When she heard it clearly, she woke up. When she opened her eyes, the two people who were arguing had stopped. A pair of very warm hands held her hand. Li Qinshue sat down by the bed and stared at her. Her eyes were a little worried. You're awake? Are you okay? The moment Su Peijian saw Li Qianxue, she was completely stunned. Just now, she thought she was dreaming, but everything in front of her told her that she wasn't dreaming. Her lips moved, but she couldn't say the word mother. Auntie, why are you here? The word auntie made Li Qianxue's expression change slightly. For a moment, she looked at Su Peijian, as if she was a little helpless. You've already called me on my cell phone. Why do you think I'm here? Su Peijian was stunned. The last memory was that she didn't know how to dial the number, and the continuous cries of pain. She seemed to have recalled something, and her heart started to ache sharply again. There was a glass of water beside her lips, and she was helped to sit up. Li Qianxue looked at her like this, and no matter how angry she was, she couldn't vent it. Drink some water. You have a fever, and your body is very weak now. Li Qianxue's voice didn't sound emotional. Su Peijian sat there and let her feed her until the last drop of water. When the warm water entered her throat, she couldn't help but look up at Li Qianxue. She was as noble and elegant as ever, but there was a little more gentleness in her eyes than before. It was probably because she was living well now. She looked down. Before she could react emotionally, Li Qianxue spoke first. Chapter 863. Su Peijian leaned on the hospital bed. When she met Li Qianxue's cold eyes, she suddenly didn't know what to say. What should she say? That she was abandoned by a man? That she accidentally provoked a man, but that man was just playing with her? That she fell in love with him, but that man just wanted to take revenge on her for being blind for a moment? Su Peijian couldn't say it. She sat there, shrouded in gloom. Li Qianxue winked at Su Chenghui behind her. Su Chenghui smiled at Su Peijian and then went out. After he left, Li Qianxue's face became serious. She turned to look at Su Peijian. Say it. Say what? Su Peijian didn't understand. Li Qianxue didn't let her play dumb and went straight to the point. Who is that man? Su Peijian's face didn't look good. She lowered her head and didn't know what to say. What? You don't want to admit it? To be able to make a woman like this, what else could it be other than a broken heart? Even if she wasn't the child. No matter what, she was the child she raised. Li Qianxue thought she knew Su Peijian very well. Su Peijian didn't lack money. She heard that she did a good job in the company. Seeing her half dead yesterday, Li Qianxue could only guess that she was broken up. She wanted to know which damned man made Su Peijian like this. No man. Su Peijian clenched her hands. She didn't look at Li Qianxue's eyes. There was a flash of determination in her eyes. No man. She just didn't feel well yesterday. She heard herself murmur. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian and seemed a little helpless. She reached out and held Su Peijian in her arms. Su Peijian's body became extremely stiff in an instant. The tip of her nose was the smell that she used to be very familiar with. She was patted on the back by a hand. Li Qianxue's voice sounded a little helpless. Peijian, I hope you remember. You are the daughter of the Su family, and you will always be. Holding Su Peijian, Li Qianxue felt a little sad. However, she restrained that emotion. Don't bear it alone. No matter when, whether it's me or your father, we will help you. Su Peijian felt a lump in her throat. She buried her head in Li Qianxue's arms, sniffed, and nodded hard. She didn't say anything, but Li Qianxue understood everything. Holding the child that she had raised with her own hands, she felt a little sad. The atmosphere in the ward was silent. Su Peijian felt a little embarrassed. He pushed Li Qianxue away slightly. Li Qianxue let go of her hand and looked at her with heartache. Rest well, you're still sick. What do you want to eat? I'll have someone bring it to you. How about shrimp congee? Su Peijian didn't say anything and just nodded again. Child, you're really, he did not finish his sentence. Li Qianxue got up and went to the door to inform Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui nodded and planned to go by himself. Only, she's emotionally unstable, you, Li Qianxue's eyes swept over him, and a fierce look appeared on her face. What do you mean? Are you afraid that I still remember the past? Humph. Su Qinghui, if I want to remember something, I should remember what you did. What does it have to do with my daughter? How did I mean that? Su Qinghui felt wronged. I was afraid that you would think too much. Don't think that he didn't know that when Li Qianxue heard him call her auntie just now, she might have taken it to heart. All right, isn't it still a sin? Li Qianxue glared at Su Qinghui, her eyes filled with dissatisfaction. Su Qinghui was afraid that she would bring up the past. He quickly begged for mercy. Chapter 864. It was your fault in the first place. Is it my fault? Yes, yes, yes. My wife won't be wrong. Su Qinghui coaxed Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue didn't even look at him and went straight back to the ward. Su Peijian seemed to have calmed down. She leaned on the bed and didn't know what she was thinking. She didn't speak, and Li Qianxue wasn't in a hurry. She just poured her a glass of water. Thank you. Su Peijian took the water and was about to call her mom out of habit, but she held back. She didn't speak, and Li Qianxue didn't speak either. The mother and daughter, who used to be related, looked at each other in silence. Su Peijian finished the water and was about to put the glass down. Li Qianxue took the initiative to take it and put it aside. Her action made Su Peijian's nose sour again. When had Li Qianxue ever taken care of anyone before? But in the past, whenever she felt uncomfortable, the person who took care of her had always been Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue had never asked anyone else to take care of her. Her nose started to sting again. She didn't expect that she would call Li Qianxue subconsciously. However, the call had already been made, and the incident had already happened. It was obviously too late for her to take back the phone call. She had always imagined that the reunion would be after she had a good life and had completely let go. She hoped to see those people who existed in her memory again. Not like now, when she was caught off guard, and when she was at her most pathetic state. She bit her lip and felt very complicated. There was always a kind of child who ran away from home, wanting to make a name for herself in front of adults, but she didn't expect to be down and out. Li Qianxue looked at her and reached out to hold her hand. If you don't tell me who that man is, I won't ask. You're old enough to take care of yourself. If you feel uncomfortable staying in Rome City, go back to Lin City. Her voice paused here. Your room has always been kept at home. Nanny Zhang will clean it every day. I was serious when I said that. No matter when, you are the daughter of the Su family. This was already a kind of acknowledgement. No matter when, as long as Su Peijian wanted, she could go home at any time. Su Peijian's lips were tightly pressed into a straight line, and finally, she nodded hard. She didn't know what she could say. When Li Qianxue was so angry, she thought she would never forgive herself. Auntie, I. His throat was a little choked, and he only felt that it was very difficult. Li Qianxue held her hand tightly again. She patted the back of her hand gently. What a silly child. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian with heartache, sadness, and many other emotions that she couldn't put into words. She used to think that she would be angry for the rest of her life, but in fact, she was really not angry at Su Peijian. Back then, when he announced that he was severing ties with her, it was also because of a moment of anger. But in the end, he was still a child raised by himself. At that time, he had been so focused on Su Qinghui that he had neglected Su Peijian's feelings. It was her fault that her child had gone astray. Peijian. Sorry. This sudden apology took Su Peijian by surprise. Li Qianxue's lips curled into a smile, and there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. I was so mad at your father. It's my fault for not taking care of your feelings. Su Peijian didn't know how to respond to Li Qianxue's question. She just stared at her blankly. Li Qianxue reached out and tucked her hanging hair behind her ear. You are the child I raised. I should have trusted you. I didn't take good care of you. I didn't care about you. That's why you went astray. Su Peijian bit her lip and shook her head desperately. It wasn't like that. It really wasn't like that. Just like Su Qingsang said, she was just selfish and narrow-minded. She didn't want to share. If you don't want to call me mom, I'll accept it. But don't scare me like this next time. Li Qianxue couldn't deny that the moment she received Su Peijian's call, she was shocked at first, but then her heart ached. She had raised her pampered daughter. Even though they had broken off their relationship, when had she ever suffered like this? When had she ever cried out in pain like this? Not to mention that Su Peijian was naturally very strong. When she was young, she never cried when she had a cold or a fever. She was proud and flamboyant, and she would not easily show her pain in front of others. When she received the call, she really didn't care about anything else. She booked the nearest plane ticket and flew over. She was also glad that she came. Otherwise, she didn't know what Su Peijian would have done. This child was very stubborn. She probably didn't want Xiang Kaiping to know. Su Peijian kept shaking her head. She wanted to say that she didn't call her mom because she wasn't sure if she still had the right to do so, but she couldn't say those words. Her throat felt uncomfortable as if it was blocked by something. She could only look at Li Qianxue with tears in her eyes. She wanted to call Li Qianxue, but Su Qinghui came back with the porridge he had specially bought. Have some porridge. You are still very weak. Have a good rest after eating it. Let's talk about it when you are better. Su Peijian couldn't say a word other than nodding. She looked at Li Qianxue's beautiful face and really wanted to call her mom, but she couldn't. Su Peijian still had a fever. After eating the porridge that Su Qinghui brought, she fell asleep again in a daze. When she was half asleep, she felt that someone was coming. When she opened her eyes, she found that it was Su Qingsang. She had also come to see her. Hua Jinyao stood outside the door with a cold face and didn't come in. Hua Jinyao still couldn't forget what Su Peijian had done to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang could let it go, but he couldn't. However, since Su Qingsang wanted to see her, he could only let her go. It was impossible for him to let go, forgive, or even accept Su Peijian. Su Qinghui knew what Hua Jinyao was thinking and called him outside. No one knew what he said, but when he came back, Hua Jinyao's face looked slightly better. Hua Jinyao and his wife left. Li Qianxue returned to the bed and sat down. She reached out and held Su Peijian's hand. Qingsang is a good child. You should know a little about her personality. If anything happens next time, if I am not in Rong City, you can go to Qingsang and Hua Jinyao. Even if we are not here, he will help you. Su Peijian didn't say anything. Some things couldn't be done with help from others. How could others help her when it came to matters of the heart? She could only blame herself for being as blind as a bat. Thinking of Ling Jing, Su Peijian's heart ached again. Ling Jing, Ling Jing. These two words had become a knife. As long as it was mentioned, it would hurt. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to see her like this. She wanted to say a lot, but in the end, she could only sigh. The mother and daughter couldn't go back to the past. Ling Jing sat behind his desk. In front of him was a pile of documents waiting for him to solve, but he only felt annoyed. He didn't want to deal with these business matters at all. He didn't want to sit here at all. He resisted the urge to sweep all the things on the table to the ground. He got up and walked to the window. Chapter 865. He had the urge to destroy everything in his heart. It was at this time that the ancient cultivator ran into his muzzle. Young master. Gu Xiu's expression was solemn as he approached Ling Jing. Shen Lefyu went out. Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. Went out? That was interesting. Where did she go? Our people have been watching her. She seems to be going to third young master's villa. Ling Jing smiled with a bloodthirsty murderous intent in his eyes. If that's the case, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Gu Xiu looked at Ling Jing's expression and felt a chill on the back of his neck. Shen Lefyu looked at the man in front of her. Her brother asked her to find this person. He said that as long as she found him, he would find a way to save her brother. She had tried before. Originally, he wanted Ling Jing to let him go, but Ling Jing was too difficult to control. She was temperamental and unpredictable. She had tried several times, but Ling Jing never let her go. She had no choice. No matter what, she had to save her brother. Third young master of the Ling family, Ling Yu. He was the one who asked his brother to kill Ling Jing. Since that was the case, he had to be responsible for his brother and save him. Ever since Ling Yu instructed Shen Jing to kill Ling Jing, he had been very nervous, afraid that Shen Jing would give him up. But he really couldn't wait. He was afraid that Ling Jing would find out and tell the old man. Fortunately, it had been a few months and Ling Jing hadn't done anything. He had already been relieved. He didn't expect Shen Lefyu to come to him. The moment he saw Shen Lefyu, he didn't feel pity for her. He only felt annoyed. It was not easy for this matter to pass like this. Ling Jing, that kid, had not made any movements recently. What if Ling Jing found out that Shen Lefyu came here? What are you doing here? Third young master, please save my brother. Please save my brother. Shen Lefyu cried as soon as she saw Ling Yu. My brother was caught by young master Ling because he did things for you. You must save my brother. Ling Yu was annoyed to see this person. Are you crazy? Why are you begging me? I haven't blamed your brother for his incompetence, and you still have the nerve to come to me? But my brother was caught by Ling Jing to do things for you. You must save him. Let me tell you, your brother isn't dead yet. If I went to save him, wouldn't I be giving Ling Jing something to use against me? Do you think I'm stupid? Ling Yu would never save Shen Jing. If your brother is dead, then so be it. What does it have to do with me? Third young master, you can't do this. Third young master. Shen Lefyu still wanted to say something, but Ling Yu had lost his patience. Don't come here and be an eyesore. Third young master, my brother got into trouble because he was doing things for you. I don't care, you must save him. Shen Lefyu went forward to hug Ling Yu's thigh. Ling Yu lifted his leg to kick her to the side, but Shen Lefyu hugged him so tightly that he couldn't kick her away. Ling Yu was furious. He looked at his subordinates and said, "Are you dead? Don't you know how to pull this person away? Third brother doesn't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Even I want to avenge him." Ling Jing's sudden voice made Ling Yu freeze. He looked at Ling Jing, as if he didn't understand why he suddenly appeared. Behind Ling Jing, in addition to Gu Xiu, were nearly 10 subordinates, all dressed in black suits and ties. Ling Jing was the only one. He wore a white suit but a dark purple tie. He looked like a little prince who walked out of a painting, but there was a hint of evil in him. When he raised his beautiful phoenix eyes, they looked like they were smiling, but they were full of malice. You, why are you here?" Ling Yu suddenly felt uncomfortable when he saw him. Isn't third brother in the middle of a drama? Since it's a drama, I, as his younger brother, naturally have to come and watch. As Ling Jing spoke, he walked to the sofa. The subordinate behind her pretended to brush the sofa a few times, and then Ling Jing sat down. He looked up and saw Shen Lefyu trembling beside him. He curled his lips, and the evil in his eyes deepened. "Continue. Why did you stop?" The scene in the living room was very strange. Shen Lefyu, who had been hugging Ling Yu's thigh, didn't dare to do so anymore. She withdrew her hands and shrunk there, looking even more pitiful. Ling Jing rubbed his temples and looked at Gu Xiu behind him. He received a signal from his eyes and waved his hand. Immediately, two subordinates pulled Shen Lefyu away. Shen Lefyu's body had completely lost its strength and was limp. If it weren't for the people holding her, she would have already slipped to the ground. Third brother. Ling Jing looked at Ling Yu and clicked his tongue. Look at how soft-hearted you are. This woman came to pester you, so just pull her out. Why are you wasting so much time talking? Ling Yu didn't know what Ling Jing was doing, so he didn't dare to move at all. Ling Jing moved her fingers, and the subordinate standing next to Shen Lefyu punched Shen Lefyu's abdomen. She screamed and curled up. Another subordinate punched her again, and blood flowed from the corner of Shen Lefyu's mouth. Ling Jing looked at Ling Yu. Third brother, did you see that? Ling Yu swallowed his saliva. He was really scared by Ling Jing. Ling Jing, you, what did I do? What are you doing, third brother? I didn't ask someone to assassinate you, right? I didn't ask someone to bribe your subordinates to stab you in the back, right? So, why are you so scared? Shen Lefyu had already fallen to the ground. The two subordinates let go and looked at Ling Yu together. Ling Yu's legs were a little weak. Ling Jing, what do you want? What do I want? That's a good question. Ling Jing didn't know what he wanted to do. He was just angry, and wanted to kill someone. He had nowhere to vent the anger in his heart. His fingers moved again, and the two subordinates stood in front of Ling Yu. Ling Jing, don't you dare. I'm your brother, Ling Yu shouted. Ling Yu screamed. Two of his subordinates had already picked up his body from both sides. He hurriedly looked behind him. Are you guys dead? Hurry up and pull me away. When the subordinates behind Ling Yu were about to get up, the remaining 8 people that Ling Jing brought with him stood forward and formed a human wall. Ling Jing stood up and looked at Ling Yu. He walked toward him step by step. Third brother, you know I have a bad temper. Ling Jing, are you crazy? What do you want? Ling Jing clenched his fists and punched Ling Yu's abdomen. The punch was fast, heavy, and ruthless. Ling Yu's body curled up. Ling Jing reached out and picked up the front of his shirt. I'll do it myself. I'm giving you face, right? Another punch, and a few more punches. Ling Yu had already fallen. He fell, but Ling Jing didn't plan to stop attacking. He raised his foot and pressed it against Ling Yu's chest, the tip of his shoe stuck in his neck. Ling Yu had difficulty breathing. He looked at Ling Jing, panting heavily. You dare what? Ling Jing smiled carelessly. You want to ask me if I dare to kill you? Do you want to try? If I really kill you, what will happen to the old man? Ling Jing, Ling Yu shouted, but soon he couldn't say anything. His face was red, and he just stared at Ling Jing. Ling Jing pushed his shoe forward, and Ling Yu's face had already turned purple. He pulled Ling Jing's foot away, but Ling Jing stuck it tightly. He let go of his foot when his hand was about to touch him. He took a step to the side and looked down at Ling Yu's changed color and twisted facial features. Third brother, you know I have a bad temper. I'm not afraid of killing you. If I really kill you, the old man will have to clean up the mess for me. Do you believe me? Ling Yu coughed non-stop, and tears started to fall from the corners of his eyes. He just looked at Ling Jing with resentment in his eyes, but he didn't say a word. Ling Jing felt bored. It was really too boring. He rubbed his shoe against Ling Yu's body, turned around, and took a step back. He moved his fingers and planned to leave. Shen Lefyu, who had been lying on the ground, seemed to have found an opportunity. She used all her strength to hug Ling Jing's leg. Young Master Ling, I beg you, let my brother go. It's all third young master's orders. It has nothing to do with my brother. I'm begging you. She had been punched twice, and her face was pale. She looked very weak. Ling Jing was about to leave, but when he looked at Shen Lefeu's eyes, he suddenly thought of Su Peijian. That day, she also fell to the ground like this. If he had left a little later, would he have seen her crying and begging him like this? Ling Jing didn't know. He closed his eyes, and when he lowered his head again, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. He shook off Shen Lefeu's hand and walked out, but when he passed by Gu Xiu, he said 2 words. Take her away. Su Peijian stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui stayed with her. 2 days later, she recovered. She left the hospital and returned to Rome Garden. Li Qianxue didn't agree at first. She was afraid that she couldn't take care of herself, so she wanted her to go to the Hua family. However, Su Peijian refused. When she recovered, she wanted to go to the company. Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui couldn't stay in Rome City all the time. They had their own things to do in Lin City. After hiring a housekeeper to take care of Su Peijian and telling her to pay attention to her 3 meals and take good care of herself, Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue left. Su Peijian didn't see Li Qianxue off. Knowing that she was going back to Lin City, she had a lot to say to her, but in the end, she just didn't say anything. She watched Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui get into the car that Hua Jinyao had arranged. When Li Qianxue was about to get into the car, she ran back and hugged Su Peijian. All right, I'm leaving. If there's anything, tell your father and me. You can also find Qing Sang. Hua Jinyao also promised to take good care of you. Don't bear it alone. If he could handle it, he would. If he couldn't, he would go home. Got it? Yes. Su Peijian's nose was sore. She nodded heavily, hugged Li Qianxue, and quickly let go. Li Qianxue let go of her, turned around, and got into the car to leave. Chapter 866. The weather was good. Su Peijian looked up at the blue sky. This time, she didn't feel abandoned. She knew that she wasn't alone. Other than Xiang Kaiping, she had Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue. What happened yesterday was like yesterday's death, and what happened today was like today's life. From now on, Su Peijian, be strong and pull yourself together. You'll be the old Su Peijian again. Taking a deep breath, Su Peijian got into her car and drove to the company. When she passed by the bakery, she glanced at it subconsciously. The shop was still there, but everything had become a joke. It was really ridiculous. Su Peijian looked away and never looked in that direction again. Everything was over. Su Peijian's life returned to normal. Every day, she went to work, got off work, and went home. She didn't see Ling Jing again. Half a month later, Ling Kaiping came back. She had a lot of fun this time and brought a lot of gifts for Su Peijian. She almost filled Su Peijian's bed. Peijian. Xiang Kaiping went out to have fun. She was always with people around her age. Since they were all together, the most they talked about was their children. He had gone out to see a different world and come into contact with different people. Xiang Kaiping finally figured some things out. After showing Su Peijian the gifts, she took her hand to sit on the bed and patted the back of her hand. Mom has thought it through. If you don't like Feishing, so be it. You can be with whoever you like. If you don't want to get married, then don't. As long as you're happy. I used to worry that no one would take care of you. But now I realize that you can actually take good care of yourself. Since that's the case, I have nothing to worry about. Xiang Kaiping said this and sighed. No matter what, as long as you're happy. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Kaiping's hand. She knew that Xiang Kaiping loved her too. She lowered her head and blinked. When she looked up at Xiang Kaiping again, there was a bright smile in her eyes. Mom. Thank you, but don't worry. It's not that I don't want to get married, but I don't think I've met anyone I like yet. As long as I do, I'll get married. Okay. Mom believes you. My daughter naturally has good taste. It's just that those stinking brats aren't worthy of her. Su Peijian smiled and looked into Xiang Caiping's eyes. For the first time, she took the initiative to lean on her shoulder. She looked at an unknown point and murmured, "Mom, don't worry. I'll be happy." Not long after Xiang Caiping came back, the duplex that Su Peijian had bought had already been renovated. Su Peijian planned to air the house to get rid of the smell before moving in. She had ordered the furniture online, and when it was delivered, she happened to be free, so she went there herself. Su Peijian walked out of the new house and was about to return to the company when she realized that it was already evening. Instead of returning to the company, he chose to return to the villa. Because Xiang Caiping had talked things out with her the last time she came back, their relationship had improved quite a bit. She would be able to get along with Xiang Caiping better. Occasionally, she would receive a call from Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue, who were concerned about her. She would only say that she was fine. Other than telling them that she was safe, she did not say anything else. Time went by unhurriedly for a month. Su Peijian only realized that summer had arrived when everyone on the street had changed into short-sleeved shirts. She had bought all the furniture, and everything in the new house was ready. Xiang Caiping had taken the initiative to do this. Su Peijian was restless now, so it was good to find her something to do. When she got up in the morning, she changed into her sportswear and ran outside. Halfway through, she met the golden retriever again. The golden retriever was very excited to see her. When it wanted to pounce on her again, someone pulled its leash. When she saw Lin Feixing again, Su Peijian did not feel embarrassed at all. She nodded and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, Lin Feixing stopped her. "Peijian." "Yes?" "What? You can't even be a friend now that you can't be a lover?" Lin Feixing joked. Su Peijian felt a little helpless. "I didn't mean that." "That's good." Lin Feixing smiled. "Recently, our company has a case that I think you should be interested in. What do you think? Do you want to pick a time to talk?" "Sure." Su Peijian wouldn't turn down such an opportunity. "When is it convenient for you?" she asked. "How about tomorrow?" "Okay." After making an appointment with Lin Feixing, Su Peijian continued to run back, leaving Lin Feixing standing behind her and looking at her back for a long time. Finally, he lowered his head and rubbed the head of the golden retriever under his feet. "Dian Dian, have you noticed that she's a little different?" As for what was different, Lin Feixing could not tell. Su Peijian did not know the changes in the eyes of others. To her, life was the same as when she had just been released from prison. After making an appointment with Lin Feixing, the two of them agreed to meet at a club that night. Su Peijian could roughly guess Lin Feixing's hidden thoughts, so she did not refuse. The two of them arrived at the club. After entering the private room, they were not in a hurry to talk about the cooperation. They talked for a while about the recent situation and the progress of the previous case. Lin Feixing was a very chatty person. There was no need to worry about not having a topic to talk with him. The two of them talked for a while, and Lin Feixing's phone rang. He politely stood up and said that he had to go outside to make a call. Su Peijian gestured for him to do as he pleased and let him go. While she was waiting, she took out her phone, replied to a few emails, and made 2 more calls. Finally, when she finished scrolling through her WeChat moments, she realized that Lin Feixing had not returned yet. Puzzled, she stood up and went outside to look for him. After searching for a while, Su Peijian finally stood outside the men's bathroom and took out her phone to call Lin Feixing. The person who answered the phone was not Lin Feixing. It was an unfamiliar voice. "The gentleman you're looking for is on the top floor. Miss, you can come up directly to him." Top floor? Su Peijian did not know what Lin Feixing was doing up there. She returned to the private room. Not quite sure what had happened to him, she picked up her bag and went up to the top floor. The dining area was on the second and third floors, and the entertainment facilities were on the fourth to seventh floors. The eighth floor and above were guest rooms, and the top floor seemed to be a presidential suite. What was Lin Feixing doing here? Su Peijian was a little uncertain. She believed that Lin Feixing was not a casual person, but she went upstairs and got out of the elevator. There was only one door. Su Peijian looked at the door, walked up, and pressed the doorbell. The door opened quickly, and a man she did not know stood inside. Gu Xiu looked at the man in front of him. The man took a step back and said, "Miss Su, please." Su Peijian looked at him uncertainly, and then walked in. There was a row of men in black standing on both sides of the door, and they looked like bodyguards. Passing through the row of people, Su Peijian saw Ling Jing sitting in the middle of the raised living room. Beside him were two young women, one on his left and the other on his right. One was pouring wine into his glass, and the other was feeding a piece of fruit into Ling Jing's mouth. The moment she saw Ling Jing, Su Peijian felt as if her heart was being squeezed again. The hand was very strong, and her heart began to ache. She clenched her teeth and suppressed the pain. Ling Jing was wearing a black shirt, and the top two buttons had been unbuttoned by him. His muscular chest was exposed. He leaned against the back of the sofa, relaxed and leisurely. Eating the fruit that the woman next to him fed into his mouth, the corners of his eyes raised with a somewhat evil smile. This was Ling Jing, the young master of the Ling family. This was his real face. Su Peijian suddenly had this realization. Taking a deep breath, she turned around and wanted to leave. The two black-robed men at the side blocked her way at this time. She looked at the two people in front of her and had to turn around to face Ling Jing. What? Aren't you curious about where that pretty boy is now? The sudden question made Su Peijian suddenly understand. Why wasn't Lin Feixing the person who answered the phone? What did you do to him? Looking at the situation today, it was not difficult to guess who was behind Lin Feixing not returning to the private room. Why don't you guess? Ling Jing's nonchalant tone was really infuriating. The woman next to him handed him a glass of red wine, and he directly drank it from her hand. The way he looked at her was full of provocation. Su Peijian stood there motionlessly, her hands hanging by her side tightly clenched into fists. What on earth do you want? What do I want? That is really a good question. Ling Jing frowned as if he had thought of something. Woman, I remember I said that one day, I will make you beg me. Beg me, and I will let him go. How about that? Crazy. Su Peijian didn't even have the intention to stop. She turned around and continued to walk. At this moment, the big screen next to her lit up. She turned around and glanced at the screen. On the screen, Lin Feixing was tied up. The corner of his mouth was bleeding, and there were a few bruises on his face. It was obvious that he had been beaten. Su Peijian couldn't move. Ling Jing had dealt with Lin Feixing because of her. She couldn't just leave like this. She gritted her teeth, took a deep breath, and let the pain in her heart spread again. She forced herself to look extremely calm and turned to face Ling Jing. Ling Jing, if you have any anger, take it out on me. He is just an irrelevant person. It's an irrelevant person. Ling Jing raised his eyebrows because of her words. But just now, he bumped into me and hurt my shoulder. I just called him over to teach him a lesson. Can't I? Yes, of course. Su Peijian could see Ling Jing's power and that this was Ling Jing's territory. Su Peijian nodded. Then, may I ask if young Master Ling is done teaching him a lesson? Can you let him go now? No, Ling Jing said rather shamelessly. I have to let him know how powerful I am, right? Know how powerful Ling Jing was? She knew all too well. How could a person like Lin Feixing survive in Ling Jing's hands? Su Peijian couldn't even adjust her breathing. She couldn't help but take a step forward, her bright face full of sharpness. Chapter 867. The atmosphere in the private room was a bit depressing. The 2 rows of bodyguards behind her and the scene of Lin Feixing being beaten on the big screen made Su Peijian feel that the Ling Jing in front of her was no longer the hooligan she had picked up. It was the same person, but it gave people a completely different feeling. This wasn't the Ling Jing she knew. This was a stranger. She stood there and looked at Ling Jing coldly, waiting for him to say something to humiliate or embarrass her. That was Ling Jing's goal. What did it matter if he only said a few words to her? Didn't I say it just now? Beg me. Ling Jing spread his hands and said indifferently, if you beg me, I'll let him go. Su Peijian clenched her fists. I beg you. Wasn't that what he wanted? She gave it to him. She looked at him coldly. Even when she said the word beg, there was a hint of arrogance in her eyes. Ling Jing suddenly smiled. That smile was very sarcastic. Is this your attitude when you beg people? Okay. Su Peijian clenched her fists and nodded heavily. Then I wonder, how does young Master Ling want me to beg you? Ling Jing looked at her. He watched her beg him for another man. He watched her stand in front of him with a cold face, as if she was not affected at all. The malice in his eyes deepened. He looked up at Su Peijian and glanced at the coffee table in front of him. Simple. See this bottle of wine on the table? You drank it all. Let's forget about what happened today. Su Peijian glanced at the coffee table. Ling Jing was talking about vodka. Drink the whole bottle of vodka? He was really imaginative. If I finish this wine, let's forget about what happened today, right? She took a step forward and looked at Ling Jing coldly, making the final confirmation. Yes. Ling Jing seemed to be annotating her own words, as long as you drink this bottle of wine. As long as you drink this bottle of wine, I'll let bygones be bygones. How about that? Okay. Su Peijian didn't even frown. She nodded to show that she understood. She went forward and picked up the bottle. She didn't even need a glass. She directly put the bottle to her mouth and began to drink. When the strong liquor entered the throat, it actually made people feel uncomfortable. Su Peijian took a few sips and almost choked. She gritted her teeth and endured it. Soon, not only did her throat feel uncomfortable, but her stomach also began to feel uncomfortable. Half of the wine in the bottle was gone, but she continued. Ling Jing sat there and looked at them coldly. Her hands on her knees were clenched into fists. The woman beside him fed him wine. He opened his lips mechanically and drank it. He felt that the wine was a little bitter. 2/3 of the vodka was gone, but Su Peijian was still drinking. Some of the wine flowed out of the corner of her mouth. It slid down her beautiful neck and into her clothes. She was wearing a white silk shirt today, and the light texture was easily wet by the wine. The dampness on his white clothes became more and more obvious. Ling Jing's face couldn't be more gloomy. He watched as Su Peijian finished the last of her wine. Finally, he put the bottle down. The bottle clinked on the table. Young Master Ling, is this okay? Su Peijian, who had drunk a bottle of white wine in one breath, looked very ugly. Not only was her face swollen, but her eyes were also a little bloodshot. She stared straight at Ling Jing's face, her eyes firm and a little gloomy. Ling Jing didn't say anything. He just stared at Su Peijian. She also stubbornly looked back at him. There seemed to be countless sparks in the air. Ling Jing suddenly flared up at this moment. All of you, get out. Su Peijian stood still. The others didn't understand what was going on. Only the ancient cultivator standing on the side understood. With a glance, the 2 women on the side stood up reluctantly and then went outside. The bodyguards on both sides stepped back and left together. Only Su Peijian stood there without moving. She stared at Ling Jing. When she heard the sound of the door closing behind her, she asked again very calmly, Young Master Ling, is it okay now? Can you let her go now? The alcohol began to erode Su Peijian's will. She wasn't bad at drinking, but she had never drunk a bottle of vodka in one breath like this. She even felt a little weak in her legs. It was her strong willpower that she could stand here with her body straight. Ling Jing stood up, walked around the coffee table, and walked step by step to Su Peijian. Finally, he stood in front of her. He stared at Su Peijian's face. His almond-shaped eyes, which had always been evil, were now a little sinister. Yes. Of course you can. I, young Master Ling, always do what I say. If you want me to let her go, I will let her go. Su Peijian didn't have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Ling Jing's next words made her stand there motionless. I just said, forget about that gigolo. I didn't say that forget about what happened before. What happened before? Su Peijian was a little dizzy from the alcohol. What do you mean, young Master Ling? It's between you and me, of course. Ling Jing reached out and lifted Su Peijian's chin. He stared straight at her face. Think about it. I am the dignified young master of the Ling family, but you treat me as a gigolo. I've been with you for so long. What? Do you really think I can let it go? Su Peijian took a deep breath. She stared at Ling Jing. What do you want, young Master Ling? What do I want? You did something wrong. Of course, you have to be taught a lesson, right? Su Peijian stood still and looked at Ling Jing coldly. Suddenly, she smiled. Yes. You are the dignified young master of the Ling family. I, Su Peijian, wronged you to be my gigolo. Speaking of which, it is indeed my fault. I just don't know how young Master Ling plans to teach me a lesson. There was a piercing pain in her heart again. But it was only for a moment. At this time, Su Peijian was very calm. She was so calm that even the alcohol didn't have any effect on her. Ling Jing pinched her chin and looked at her delicate face. Finally, he opened his thin lips and said, "It's simple. You will stay with me for as long as I have been with you. But this time, we will do the opposite. You will be the one being kept by me. How about that?" Su Peijian's expression changed. She felt her face turn pale at Ling Jing's direct and violent humiliation. She kept adjusting her breathing and tried her best to suppress the pounding of her heart. Finally, she put away the smile on her face and looked at Ling Jing mockingly. Young Master Ling wants to keep me? You can't? Yes, of course you can. Su Peijian smiled faintly. Her expression was extremely mocking. Didn't young Master Ling say that I am a prisoner under labor reform? Doesn't young Master Ling think that it is beneath your status to keep a prisoner under labor reform like me? The air conditioning in the private room was very low, but it couldn't be lower than the temperature in Su Peijian's heart. She was very angry. So angry that if there was a knife in front of her, she would stab it into Ling Jing's body without hesitation. But strangely, perhaps because of the alcohol, she actually restrained herself. She was only using this extremely self-deprecating method to make the wound that was already very deep deeper, a little deeper. Ling Jing seemed to not feel her gaze at all. He moved his face closer to her. The distance between the two of them was less than 10 centimeters. He was close to her face. There was a faint smell of alcohol in the air. She didn't know whether it was from her or him. It is indeed beneath my status, but what should I do? I haven't had enough fun with you, a prisoner under labor reform. Think about it, I've played with so many women, but only one like you is lacking. At first, you were the daughter of a rich family, and then you became a prisoner under labor reform. TSK, thinking about it, it's really quite exciting. So I want to continue playing. Can't I? The insulting tone, the flirtatious expression, and the evil look in his eyes were blatantly provocative. Su Peijian swatted his hand away and took a big step back. Ling Jing, don't go too far. I like going too far, can't I? He moved closer to Su Peijian again and pinched her chin. Then do you want it or not? Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Her little face, which was flushed because of the alcohol, was now frighteningly pale. She had never drunk like this before. It made her whole body feel uncomfortable. But she couldn't leave. She could think calmly, but the alcohol made her consciousness somewhat unable to keep up, and her reaction was just a beat slower. Ling Jing. She forcefully swatted his hand away. She raised her face and looked at Ling Jing stubbornly. I refuse. Refuse? Ling Jing suddenly laughed. Do you think you can refuse? He raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the big screen. Do you believe that even if I kill him today, nothing will happen to me tomorrow? Believe. Of course she believed. Su Peijian had long seen that Ling Jing had this ability. Su Peijian clenched her fists, and that hand began to pinch her heart again. She stood there motionless, letting her heart be squeezed out of shape by that hand, broken, and never put back together again. In front of her, Ling Jing's face was magnified in front of her. He seemed to have become a monster that could devour her. She didn't know if it was the effect of alcohol or something else, but she only felt that her consciousness was getting more and more dizzy. She took a step back, but her feet went soft, and her body couldn't stand. What? You don't believe me? Ling Jing stepped forward and pulled her body up. Do you want to try? Su Peijian was pulled by him, and her body crashed into his arms. The discomfort that she had been suppressing finally couldn't be restrained anymore. She tilted her head, tilted her body, and directly vomited on Ling Jing's body. The pungent and unpleasant smell was mixed with the very choking smell of alcohol. Ling Jing's face turned green. Su Peijian was really uncomfortable. Drinking strong alcohol was bad for the body, and drinking fast was even more so. Not only did she vomit once, but she also continued to vomit a second time. Her footsteps were unsteady. She didn't want to fall, so she reached out and grabbed Ling Jing's arm, and vomited again. Ling Jing's clothes were already out of shape. The smell was unpleasant, and the vomit was dirty. His face changed. He was sure that this woman did it on purpose. Chapter 868. Damned woman, she was really courting death. He reached out to pull Su Peijian away, but her legs gave way and she fell backward. There was a flash of panic in Ling Jing's eyes. Before he returned to his senses, his body reacted quickly and supported her. Su Peijian, who was touched by him, had a face full of resistance. She waved her hand and wanted to push Ling Jing away. Let me go. It was just that she was too weak, and Ling Jing was too strong. Before she lost consciousness, all she could feel was Ling Jing's embrace. His chest was still warm, but it could no longer warm her heart. What it brought her was only a stretch of coldness. When Su Peijian woke up, she only felt a splitting headache. It took her a long time to really wake up. He opened his eyes and placed his hand on his forehead. The headache was getting more and more obvious. Looking at the environment in front of her, for a moment, she thought that she had returned to her home in Lin City. The room was very big, and the bed under her was very soft. It was all handmade Italian furniture. She frowned and didn't know where she was for a moment. Some fragments came to her mind intermittently, and she suddenly remembered what happened before she fainted. Ling Jing, she never thought that one day when he recovered his identity, he would be so ruthless and resolute. Looking around, she could roughly guess where she was at the moment. Thinking that she was in Ling Jing's place, she couldn't stay any longer. She got up and realized that her clothes were gone, leaving only her underwear. This surprised her again, but it was only for a moment. She was still clear that her body didn't feel like that. Ignoring her current appearance, she got out of bed. She walked to the wardrobe and stood still. She found that the wardrobe was full of men's clothes. Every one of them was handmade and of excellent workmanship. Looking at the clothes on the wardrobe, Su Peijian smiled. Yes, she should have discovered it when they first met. Ling Jing's clothes were all extraordinary. Although he was covered in blood, it couldn't hide his temperament. Su Peijian closed her eyes and mocked in her heart that she was indeed blind. If she wasn't blind, she would have seen it long ago. Although Ling Jing was sloppy and looked very improper most of the time. But how could his every movement be that of a hooligan? He was blind, so who could he blame for the backlash? Shaking her head to get rid of those useless thoughts, she picked out a shirt and put it on. Ling Jing's pants were too big for her. After some thought, she watched him take out a knitted polo shirt from his closet. He put it on his waist from the bottom and tied it in a knot with his sleeve. It turned into a somewhat different kind of dress. Looking at himself in the mirror, he felt that it would be fine to go out like this. He turned around and left the room. There was no one in the corridor. Su Peijian stood there and looked at the long corridor on both sides. Finally, she walked in the direction of the stairs. It was such a big villa, but there seemed to be no one there. Su Peijian stepped on the thick carpet. When she reached the stairs, she happened to see Ling Jing walking upstairs. He stood in the middle of the spiral staircase and narrowed his eyes at the sight of her clothes. The white shirt was obviously a little too big for her, and she just had to use a black dress as a skirt. This outfit was extremely unconventional, but because the person wearing it was her, it made her look a little more casual. This woman, no matter when, had the capital to seduce men. Up the stairs, Ling Jing's eyes were locked on Su Peijian, and he didn't look away for a moment. Su Peijian stood straight. Even though she was wearing Ling Jing's clothes, it still couldn't hide her imposing manner. Their eyes met in the air. Su Peijian's expression didn't change, but Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. He had seen Su Peijian in disheveled clothes. He had never seen Su Peijian in men's clothes. The higher he went, the more he could see her body under the shirt. Just the thought of his shirt on her body was enough to drive him crazy. He finally reached the top of the stairs and stood opposite Su Peijian. His eyes were locked on Su Peijian's face. The distance between the two of them was less than 10 centimeters. Su Peijian glanced at him. After he came up, she turned around and walked downstairs. Before she could take a step, her arm was grabbed by someone. She turned around and looked at Ling Jing's face coldly. He pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her lips hard. She struggled, but her hands were restrained by Ling Jing. She was wearing his shirt, which made him want to tear her shirt. The imaginary scene lingered in his mind, and his kiss became more and more domineering. Su Peijian couldn't break free. Her lips were ravaged by him. She opened her mouth and bit him when he thought she wanted to kiss him. Ling Jing's lips hurt, but it stimulated the blood in his body. He carried her in his arms and went in the direction of the room. Su Peijian struggled again. She wanted to leave him, but he held her tightly. There was a natural gap between the strength of a man and a woman. She was no match for him. Her body was thrown on the bed somewhat rudely. After bouncing twice, she was suppressed again before she could get up. The moment he approached, Su Peijian turned her face away. Ling Jing, this is rape. I can sue you. Sue me? Ling Jing sneered. Okay, do you want to try? As he spoke, he put his hand on the back of her waist. I've never seen a rapist who can make the victim orgasm. Shameless. Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Ling Jing's hand turned to her chest, and with a force, the high-quality shirt she was wearing was torn. Her clothes were half exposed, and Su Peijian struggled even more. Ling Jing, you bastard. But who was Ling Jing? She didn't want to admit defeat, and she couldn't admit defeat. Su Peijian gritted her teeth and forced herself to ignore her body's reaction. The more she did so, the more Ling Jing didn't want her to get what she wanted. The two of them had been together for half a year, and their bodies were very familiar. Even if they were separated, the memory of their bodies was still there. He clearly knew every sensitive spot on her body. He clearly knew her every reaction when he moved. It was as if they had returned to the beginning. He wanted to conquer, and she only wanted to counterattack. Every touch, every kiss, was on the point. Every time she resisted, every time she tried to escape, it could only be exchanged for more crazy attacks from him. Her polo shirt was soon torn, her shoes fell to the ground, and her body was firmly nailed under him. Woman. Ling Jing bit her lips and said in a slightly hoarse voice, I will let you know that this is not called rape, but rape. The morning sun shone into the room. It was a new day. And his plunder had just begun. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.